I'm rocking Burial Brewing Company. It's the brewery down in Asheville. Me and my buddy went down there back in November and went to a whole bunch of breweries and stuff. And like this was, dude, this brewery instantly became like one of my favorite breweries in general, not just like in that city, but just like that I've ever had. Um, and so the name the name of this one is a compilation of sporadic contemplations from minds unraveled.
Whoa.
That's the name of the
I love that
beer.
the word compilation is in there.
Right?
How
Yeah, it's
perfect.
crazy. It's an imperial stout with toasted coconut, fresh orange zest, and cocoa butter.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Yes,
So
please.
good.
uh, and I have the old standby. I got a leftover Christmas ale, Great Lakes, that's in a can for the first time this year.
Nice.
Pouring that into a glass.
Look at
Oh, I am
that.
jealous. That looks amazing. It sounds even better. Wow.
Good God, man. Like that. Uh, yes. I'm so happy right now.
Cheers, me too.
Cheers, brother.
Well, let's get into it. This is our annual mixed tradition. You and I do this in pretty much the same way, which means a lot to me, and I love having this time to dedicate to just kind of get into it. This has also
Yeah.
become it's sort of um my chance to opine on the tracks a little bit because I've gotten kind of busier than I used to be, and so I have not dedicated. This is the second year in a row I've not dedicated to the liner note paragraphs, which I kind of miss, but I've just had to make some judgment calls. But you're making up for it in terms of your liner notes. They read like a great like travel log article or whatever. I enjoy them so much, so I'm grateful that you do that.
I'm glad you're enjoying those. Yeah, mine have definitely gotten more long-winded, I think, over the last 2 to 3 years.
I'm into it. I love it. So I made notes on those as I went to kind of help me remember my initial feelings on the tracks as well as the writing, which was really fun. But yeah, why don't you well, tell me about your mix overall. Maybe we'll talk about it any overarching things before we get into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, sure. So my mix this year is called How Much Is Real? And I always try to grab a name that kind of either sums things up or just is kind of like a fun name to grab, usually from like the lyrics of one of the songs in there. So like How Much Is Real actually comes from the Peter Gabriel track that's on this album. Um, and the photo I used as the cover art was it's a park that they built this year down along the towpath trail, like kind of leading through Tremont. And I love the aesthetic of like the playground equipment and the basketball courts and tennis courts and stuff with the factory in the background. It's like it's such a weird, um, like almost dystopian looking scene at some points. And like as I've been riding my bike down that trail all summer long, I've been wanting to go like walk down there and take some photography, but there's always people milling about and hanging out and playing and stuff like that. And I just feel like a weird dude like walking around taking photos of everything. So finally, like there was a December night that was not overly cold, and I was down there, and there's nobody there. So I'm like, oh, here's my chance to get some photos. So I wasn't taking them with the intention of using them for the album, but like I loved the way it aesthetically looked with that title. So that's kind of where the imagery comes from. But yeah, so it's my 14th installment of the mix album, which as I say in the liner notes, is I stole the idea from you basically. And uh, last year's I think really leaned into marking personal experiences for me, where like every track kind of related to a show I saw or a trip I took or just like some sort of personal experience. This year it's probably about half and half. Like there's several songs that are on there just from albums that I really liked or like just like really spoke to me, or and then about half of it is are songs that relate to trips or concerts or things like that I experienced. So like I feel and I think we talked a little bit about this last year too, that I think we were both kind of getting to the point where we weren't sure if we wanted to continue to do this, and I know I definitely was, but so I think the mix albums in general for me have sort of shifted over the last couple of years from being a, an avenue for me to share what I love with other people to almost being like an audio time capsule for myself, because I don't really know how many other people other than you are actually listening to these things anymore. But every year before I make a new one, I always go back and re-listen to all my old ones. And it's just really cool to like
I love
re-listen to
that.
everything and get back in that mindset of where I was like 14, 10, 9, 8, 2 years ago, whatever. So it's kind of cool. So that's more or less the way I approach it. When I'm typing these liner notes, like I'm imagining somebody else reading them, but like I'm almost sort of typing them to myself too.
Hmm.
I think it's weird. But
Oh, it's great. Yeah, and it's funny. In some ways, my this is my 20th installment of this annual tradition
I
where
was gonna say it's the 20th anniversary for you.
yeah, yeah, and so I was like, it definitely, yeah, I was thinking about that when I don't know, was when it was forthcoming, and thinking about it in the years leading up to it, especially around 2016 or 17, maybe it was 17, where I didn't do it. And I think it was you and somebody else that I kind of shared this with. We're kind of like, "Hey, you got that their mix album this year?" And I was like, "No." But then it inspired me to re-engage. And nowadays, I don't have a I don't really have like a I don't listen to a lot of music. That might sound a little nuts, but I just don't. And in some ways, I kind of check in with artists that whose work I've enjoyed in the past, but maybe I'm not obsessive about. Like I've got my bands. Like I always know what U2 and Pearl Jam and Nine Inch Nails are up to, but you know, in any event, yeah, this tradition helps me look for stuff and helps me kind of, if something does catch my ear, I'm like, oh, what's that now? And I'll kind of, um, yeah. So it's kind of it is these. It's not as hard for me to pick nowadays as it maybe used to be, because it's like, I mean, I'm always whittling down, and towards the end of the year, it's like, oh, this seems to be the best thing from this person. And you had mentioned how it's become this kind of personal diary thing for you. And it very quickly became that for me. I think the very first year there was in 2004, there was a bit of that going on. Like I was newly separated, like I was married for a very short time in my early 20s, and just kind of, I don't think I was even officially divorced yet. And so it was a pretty dark fix because that's what I was grappling with. But at the same time, there was a big component of like songs that were resonating with me because of that. But then also at the time there were things that, like, I went to see Damien Rice. I was huge into Damien Rice, his first album. I went to see him at the Odeon in Cleveland, and opening for him
it's the
there,
Odeon.
yeah, opening him for there was another Irish band called The Frames, which are much more straight ahead rock band, and they just blew my mind. But I was completely unfamiliar with them, and I think the songs that I liked most didn't come out until their album Burn the Maps that came out the following year. But I bought their live album and then the studio album for the Birds. And now the Frames, in fact, when I said I always know what so and so are up to, I always know what the Frames are up to also. I kind of felt bad for leaving them out. But that's all to say that first year there was also a component of making sure I had a place to listen to songs that I didn't otherwise, because I was so very album oriented at the time, that if I wasn't listening to the full album, I would never hear songs. I didn't really, um, yeah, I was always CDs and all that kind of stuff, and I hadn't yet kind of gotten into iTunes. And so what's also kind of interesting, so it's always been that overly personal thing to me, to the point where I used to take out, I only did this a handful of times, but I would always think of it as like stuff I wish I had written and would sing myself. And that's become less so as my, I don't know, tastes have evolved, I guess, and just heard the same things expressed always. But there's still an element of that. But the other thing that I mentioned was iTunes. So whereas your tradition is to both take a title from that's not a song title, and to do original artwork of some kind. My tradition has always been to try to take a song from the thing that also felt like a good title. I mean, that's one of the challenges for me. It's never been like that hard, but it's something I put a lot of thought into. And then I'm not sure what year I started this, but I never had, I used to type out on an old typewriter or scan it, the kind of track listings. And there's been a few times where I had some kind of quasi original or compilation type artwork, but since maybe around 2013, I think, I started using the mosaic thing in iTunes because that, so I'm like firmly in 2003, I think, in terms of I'm fine. I've used iTunes to like buy songs. I don't have a streaming service. Ah, but that's what I do. The one thing I'll cop to with the iTunes artwork is that if when I hit like print, the mosaic thing is like really unsightly or like really prominently featuring an album that didn't feel right to me because it's a compilation of the album covers essentially. Um, then I'll kind of reorder the playlist, not in a way that I keep, but in a way that's just sort of tailored for the mosaic printout. And this year it favored an album that I was pretty happy about, and I was like, okay, we got it locked in. But
So can
yeah,
you choose like what albums and what order show up on that mosaic, or is it just sort
no,
of like a randomized thing?
it's randomized somehow, but it has to do with the order of songs to the point where when I am trying to experiment to get something that if the first iteration is something I don't like, I'll move some songs around and just see what happens. And
Okay,
because and then that'll have some kind of effect. But
gotcha.
yeah,
All right.
so it's interesting. Our traditions are very similar, but they kind of are in some ways they we're the flip side of each other on certain things.
Yeah. And like even listening habits. So like I'm kind of the opposite of what you described in that like I'm almost, for lack of a better term, an aggressive consumer of new music. To the point where every literally every Friday I'll jump on. I've probably mentioned it in the liner notes of previous mix albums before, but there's a website that I found a long time ago called albumoftheyear.org.
Oh yeah.
And it's a great database of just all of these albums that are being released on any given day. So usually I'll just kind of jump on there every Friday and just look for bands or artists that I recognize, or sometimes literally just like a cool cover design or something like that.
Yeah.
So then I'll go and check out these albums on Spotify, and I mean most of the time it's something that I'm not all that into, but every now and then I find like just a really good gem from that. So I try to just listen to as much new stuff and things that are coming out as possible, and then I also have a playlist that I regularly maintain on Spotify called Caught in the Current, which my own personal rules of that playlist are that nothing can be on there other than my own songs. There's an exception there. But nothing can be on there that's more than a calendar year old from when it was released, and nothing can stay on there for more than 6 months. So it forces me to constantly rotate in new music, stuff that I'm discovering, and I think it keeps me relevant. And I'd like to think that other people are listening to it and picking up on some stuff too. So I think that playlist now kind of serves the purpose of what I wanted my mix albums to serve, like when I started doing this, of like introducing people to music and sort of being almost like a tastemaker type thing. I don't know if it really does accomplish that. I don't know how many people are listening to that playlist, but um yeah, it serves the purpose of at least keeping me relevant and keeping me constantly seeking out new stuff and finding new stuff. And then now the mix albums themselves are just sort of that time capsule for myself. So it's interesting the way things have shifted over the years, but I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like now I'm at a point where a couple of years ago I was contemplating whether or not I want to keep doing these mix albums, but now I'm at a point where it's like I like the purpose that they serve for myself. So now I'm finding myself looking forward to it again every year. And that playlist, again, I don't know how many people are really listening to it, but it serves a purpose for myself and my own listening habits. And when I add new stuff to it, I almost get excited about adding new stuff to it, even though I've already listened to it and I know what these songs are. But now it's like, oh, cool, I get to hear them in this playlist again.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the. of yours in particular. I think more so than any other I've heard. Like it's so interesting to me how much I we have enough overlap in our sensibilities that always really like your mixes. And for me, they're always like a greater than the sum of their parts. Like they're a great album. I always love them and know them as a whole. And it's really rare. And this is not a bad thing, at least not for me, that the songs come out of context from those mixes of yours. So they're this year. I mean, I'm always trying to make a point. I start a few of them like download this, old man, and I haven't yet, but I hope I will. but but generally, yeah, I know them as this kind of complete whole. And then I guess before we dive into the tracks themselves, we both share the kind of rules of the song needs to be new to us in the calendar year, and the collected running time has to be less than that of a CDR, like less than 80 minutes.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And I'll caveat that and say that if I'm willing to forego the newness um, rule if it was linked to some sort of like event or thing like some sort of significant event or something that happened to me that year. So that'll happen from time to time on my mixes. Like last year, I think I put an Elton John song on there, which was I've known that song my whole life, but last year I saw him live, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago I saw him live, so I'm like, okay, that's why that needs to be in there. Yeah.
Oh, and I don't want to forget to say like where should someone hear this and want to hear the mix. I'm not gonna I tried to put clips last year in our discussion and it got a lot of flags on YouTube. So I don't know how readily that discussion is available because of that. So this year I'm gonna refrain from that, but we'll be talking about what we like about the songs. But where can someone go to hear your mix?
So I do have a Spotify playlist out there. I also have it, I think, up on SoundCloud and some other services. But really, the easiest way to find it is just go to my website, which is kevinconaway.com, and go to the mix album section of that. And I've got a link on there and like a widget player built into the page from Mixcloud to just listen to the whole thing as a single file.
Yeah, which I did. I really like that
Yeah. Oh,
method.
interestingly enough, I was so we were talking, I think, last year about Mixcloud too. And I was texting you a little bit earlier this year, like trying to figure out like how do we like what's a good way to host this? Because we both reached that point where we maxed out the
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
free episodes. So I can't believe it took me this long to figure this out, but like I just created a second account on Mixcloud. So
Oh,
yeah,
oh man. I
yeah.
think I missed that. I thought you used SoundCloud, which it sounds similar, but for users,
I
oh,
I did originally, but that only allows you like a certain amount too, to
that's
where like
right.
I could
Yeah.
just host two basically. So I'm like, well, why don't I just make a second account? Like so that first account is like the first decade of mix albums. The second account's going to be the second decade,
Oh,
and just keep going around
oh, I
that.
love it. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's fantastic. So let's see. I host mine digitally. If you go to davidullman.net, ullman.net/mix albums, Kevin's term, by the way. That's got links to all of the various mixes. And then this year's in particular, if you just went to davidullman.net/2023 mix, it would all be there. And it looks like, yeah, I've got lists. I made playlists on Amazon and Spotify, but it's a real, so I don't have a paid account to Spotify. And so my experience has been if you listen on a web browser, it'll let you go in order, but it'll introduce ads. However, if you listen on the phone app, I think it always defaults to shuffle. Anyway,
Mm,
that breaks my heart. So I also have an
yeah.
MP3 download, which is, I'm sure, wildly illegal, but moving on. Well, tell me about your first track, the kickoff track.
Sure. So the kickoff track for mine is a song called "Full Display" by Big Wreck. So Big Wreck's a Canadian band that I've loved really ever since the '90s. Our cable provider had a channel called Much Music, which was Canada's version of MTV. I think it's still around, but it's kind of like MTV. It's a shell of its former self now. But man, that channel introduced me to so much music and so well, that was a pun that was not intended.
Hey, I bet that was their intention.
Yeah. Introduced me to so many bands and really influenced my listening habits to this day. And like, I still distinctly remember the channel number too. It was channel 52 on our cable provider. So I'd like get home from high school, sit down on the couch, turn on the TV, just automatically hit 52. Um, but anyway, so Big Wreck was one of the bands that I discovered from that time period, and I'd kind of forgotten about them over several years. And I think it was a couple of years ago they released a new album that I went to check out, and then over the last 2 or 3 years they've been releasing these series of EPs that they would then compile together after all of them are out and like create their whatever their next album would be. Um, so I think actually last year or the year before, I included one of their songs on a mix too that was technically from the same album, but it was just from an earlier EP that then got compiled into an album. I don't know. It's a lot of detail there. But anyway, this song, it just I don't it every time I listen to it, it's one of those songs where you just got to crank it up. I love it. It gets me amped up. And I saw them live this year for the first time, and it was just an awesome show. Like they put on a great set, sounded amazing. And yeah, just like yeah, that's really all I have to say about that one. Just an awesome song.
Yeah, it's I made a note that it was a great riff, and I
Hmm.
actually wrote down the lyric "Go from addiction to addiction with your life on full display." That kind of caught my attention.
Yeah, yeah. There's some good lyric lines in that song too, and the way the song starts also with that riff. I just think I feel like it's just a perfect opener
It
track for an
is,
album.
yeah. Yeah. So I chose for mine the Foo Fighters song "Rescued," which I meant to check. I'm like post hike here, so I'm like in dripping sweat, long underwear, my workout clothes, and literally heated blankets. So I'm a little underprepared. So apology. That also opened their record. I want Here We Are, but Here We Are. I think it does.
I think it does.
Yeah. Um, so I don't want to like, yeah, it does. So I didn't want to be like also a great opener and like credit myself for that. It actually opens their album. But it just, yeah, it both felt like I mean, I come, you and I are both of a similar generation and all this, and it's just how you open a 90s rock record was with a banger. I
Yep.
never said banger. Oh, and that's happening now. Did I use that correctly?
You did. You did.
Jesus.
Yeah, that sounded good.
Oh, I guess it's
I
happening.
wouldn't have questioned that.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I felt really inauthentic, but that's me now. Here I am.
Here we
Wearing
are.
long
But here
underwear
we
and
are.
Dan Banger.
Yeah.
I should fucking get a subscribe Spotify account while we're on the call. Just but, yeah, it just felt like this big rock opener, but I also really appreciated like so I'm super lyrically focused as we've talked about from time to time, and I think that's the thing for I mean it all kind of goes together, but an exciting song for me that has lyrics that I don't identify with or for some reason say something I don't like. I'm out. And I'm also super sensitive to singers, which is a bit of a issue for me. But neither of those things has to do with this song. This song just feels like I don't know, that moment. It just also feels like the beginning of a rock concert too, to where you're there and there's all this anticipation and there's this like we're all just waiting to be rescued. Um, I think of it like music. Music is like that for me. Actually, I think I put an entirely too much pressure on it in my life. And so, something about this song captured that, but like in the best way of like not the I don't know. Not that that can be some sort of albatross, but like it's not great to put too much pressure on anything, of course. But rather just kind of focuses on that anticipation and like the lyrics talk about kings and queens and in betweens. Like we all kind of experience this, and music means different things to different people. But yeah, so I guess that sort of encapsulated it perfectly for me. In terms, and then that's a great record, and I know you've got a song from it later. Um, but I just, yeah, there was never another contender for that number one spot for me.
Yeah.
How about number two for you?
Um, Well, speaking of Foo Fighters,
Yes. Oh, I forgot it was so close.
yeah. Number two is a Foo Fighters song off that same record. So I went with the song "Under You" instead. Like you said, that is a great record. I don't think there's a bad song on that record. It's it's an album that is, I mean, it's musically and in just the amount of passion that they put into that album. I think it's one of the best in their catalog. But man, it's also one that if you're really listening to it and paying attention, it is emotionally hard to listen to just because of everything the band went through and the loss of Taylor and of Dave's mom and just kind of every song sort of relating to that subject. So it's an album that um I wish that I would have listened to more this year. And I think I don't know if just the emotional weight of the album is what prevented me from going back to it as much as I would have liked to, or if it was just more or less that like other things by other bands had happened to catch my ear at the same time, and I just maybe devoted more time to that. But every time I've listened to this album, it's been a very rewarding, difficult but rewarding experience. Um, but this song, just in particular, this out of all of the album, this song really jumped out to me just because I think it really felt like old school Foo Fighters.
I
Like it
was
felt like a
just
song.
thinking that.
Yeah,
Yep, yep. Something
yeah,
about the rhyme, about the melody. It felt like it could have been off that first album. Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's so catchy. It sounds so huge. But then when you really pay attention to the lyrics, there's so much weight to it as well. But like if you just have it in the background and you're not really paying that close of attention, it's just a big anthemic rock song. So yeah, this one I think out of everything on the album, this was the one that caught my ear the most. And and also going back to your comment earlier about like kind of making everything flow and fit like an album. I love coming out of that big wreck song. That song ends and all of a sudden you hear the guitar like boom
Mhm.
right into the next riff and just like I love that transition.
Your first three, I put like great 1, 2, 3 punch, like just
Thank
spectacular.
you.
And yeah, your transitions are the best. I have to say they're, they're like ideal transition. Like bands of the world, take note. This is how you do it. I didn't know about Dave Grohl's mom, and so I read his autobiography last year,
Ah,
and
nice.
I was reading it. I was relishing it, and when the news of Taylor Hawkins passing came out, and I was just like, I was so just like I don't know, like when you read somebody tell their life story like that, there's so much like empathy and identification that can go on if it's done well. And yeah, I was feeling very close to Dave Grohl, and then I learned his best friend died. I was like, oh no! And then they
Right.
did the tribute concerts, and holy cow!
Right.
Uh, and then of course in that book you learn how close he was to his mom, and so I learned that from your liner notes. And yeah, it's interesting how all that can work to where now that's coloring my listening of that song, and also just the way that you talk about appreciating that album so much has changed the way that I think about the album as a whole, which is yeah, I don't know, it's pretty cool. And so
Yeah.
thanks.
I got that book for Christmas this year, but I haven't actually started it yet. So, but I'm very excited to read it.
It's a real delight, and I meant to listen to the audiobook because that's actually usually how I like to listen to books, but I haven't yet. I've heard it's great, and I think the paperback might even have more stories than the hardback, like first
Oh
edition
wow.
did.
Okay.
So I don't have that either, but um yeah, let's see what I have for number two. So I have two songs by this artist that I think we both know a little bit. Uh
Mhm.
Zach, who um put out I can't keep up with his output. Like I do keep up because I'm like a Patreon of it, and I'm he's a kind of an old friend, but he is the most prolific musician certainly that I know, and maybe the most that I know of. Like he puts out so many records, and I'm not sure how many, maybe three full-length albums last year.
Jeez, wow, that is a lot of a lot of content.
Yeah. And hold on, I'm actually Oh no, I'm blanking on the name of the actual album this is from, which I want to get right.
And somehow he still finds time to like hike and post photos of nature and stuff too.
Yeah, and so I asked him. So I was really struck by the lyrics of the two songs that I chose, and he doesn't publish the lyrics. So the album is called Any Way You Can, and it's got this great kind of psychedelic cover designed by Jason Chamberlain. I'm trying to find on his website, zachmusic.net, um, how many albums last year. It's you can't. I don't even know. So the other one, the other is called Imaginary, and then he did a covers album called Quotes, a single called Choice, another full length covers album called Quotes 2, and then he
Wow.
does these he does oh he re jeez he did a he re-recorded his very first album which is 25 years old, and I just realized I haven't heard that yet. Um, I'm actually looking at these. I'm not even sure how many of them for last year. He just goes and goes and goes. And he also makes these albums called I think you call them Jai Ma. So they're curtain mantras. And those are fantastic actually. They're kind of these his sense of like melody and guitar sort of phrasing and layering and building. It's just so satisfying to me. Um, it's a wonder to me that he's not mega famous, but uh, he's from the Akron area and a wonderful dude, a terrific musician, and an incredible songwriter. And this second song that I chose from that album is called, or sorry, the second song in my mix is called Smoke and Light. And it's just full of these like super resilient, but kind of, he has this great way of, Zach just like spreads positivity like no one I've ever known. And at the same time, I think there's a kind of so he and I wrote a song together that was on respective albums of ours called The Happiest Sad Song because
I
we
remember that.
yeah, we shared some supporters, and people would joke that like, oh, his songs are so happy and yours are so sad that you should sort of balance each other out and co-write a song. And it is fun. I'm really glad we did it, but it's a bit of a gross caricature to just call him like this sort of happy-go-lucky guy, because that's a real, I think, choice and a brave choice and a strong one to in the face of all the horribleness that the world will show you to choose light. And Zach always does that, but that's not to say that he doesn't experience the the darkness or incorporate it into his music. He just finds a way to kind of make sure he's always dancing, and I love that about him. And I love the lyrics of this song. The chorus, I guess refrain is that I am the last dance. I just think it's great. Yeah. Oh, and he's
Yeah.
there's a line in there. So this is the thing where like when you caricaturize somebody. So my wife was listening to the mix, and there's a lyric in there. It says the world is fucking burning, and it's just not the thing. She's like, I thought this was Zach, and then I heard that, and I didn't think it was. I was like, oh no, that too. But yeah, really great stuff. Really great stuff.
Yeah, no, I like that one a lot too. Does he still live in Ohio or
I when I reached out about the lyrics, I was like, where are you now? He says, I'm in the mountains of Wyoming. And I was
I was
like,
gonna say I always see him posting pictures from out west. I wasn't sure if he moved out there or if he just spends a lot of time there or
I'm not super sure either, and I've been meaning to follow up with the email. I owe him a call to just sort of see what he's up to. But I think he produces a lot of these things himself and himself. But the production value and it's also excellent. Like I
Yeah.
don't know, he's really hit some kind of stride that I would have thought, I would have said the same thing 10, 15 years ago, but he just seems to get better and better. Number three for you. What's the end
Um
of that one, two, three punch?
yeah. So number three for me is Fallout Boy. And it's a quasi cover song. It's their version of "We Didn't Start the Fire," the old Billy Joel song, but they rewrote all of the lyrics to reference events that have happened since Joel's version. So like everything from like '89 up to the present day. And like I don't know, Fall Out Boy it's one, they're one of those bands where it's like I don't want to like them, but I do.
That's just what you mean. Yeah.
It's like every time I hear something new from them, I'm like, I really don't want to like this, and then I'll listen to it and just go, God damn it, I like it. and and I really liked they released a new album this year. I really liked it a lot. This song I think was a bonus track that they released after the fact and then added it onto the album after it was already out. But man, the first time I heard this, as soon as I figured out what they were doing, I was like, I'm in. Like I stopped everything that I was doing. I just sat there and paid attention to the lyrics. I think I texted it to a whole bunch of friends, like, check this out, like listen to the song. I absolutely love it. I love all the things that they reference in there. There's a line about the Cubs winning the World Series that hurts a little bit. Still, I could have done without that line, but other than that, I'm all in on this song. I absolutely love it. As I was typing up my notes, I just kind of looked some stuff up about the song and the band, and apparently they got a fair amount of criticism for this song. But I don't know. I think it's people being overly sensitive, right? Everybody has to be a critic. No, I love it. It's that's all I have on that one. It's just I came across this thing and I just absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I was into it too. I'm not a like I don't really I mean there's certain Fallout Boy? Fall Boy. What's that one? It's like so light 'em up. That one, it's irresistible. You know that a sporting event or whatever. I'm just like, yeah, nice work. But
yep.
I do know what you mean about the sentiment. And when I heard that riff, like I think I was here at my workstation and I was like, woof, my head swiveled. I was like, what? And I'm not even a fan. Like it's kind of notorious in this house that I don't like Billy Joel, which is irrational and stupid.
Really?
But yeah, I don't know.
I think this needs to be another podcast. I think
yeah.
we need to explore this.
Well, I'm gonna this. Okay, we could get into a little because the issue I took in the lyrics of this one. So I meant this is kind of a maybe a similar artist quarrel that we can maybe have quickly. I didn't like they said U2 killed MTV. That made me real mad and defensive right away. And then in this context, I'm like, in 20, what would that have been? 17 or something? Kevin was like, I didn't like Songs of Experience because it repurposed some things from their previous album. And I was like, you don't understand, Kevin. So let's talk about U2 and Billy Joel quick.
All right. All right. I don't know if I even caught that lyric, by the way.
I got a real antenna. You can't disparage them. It would be great if I misheard it.
that would be hilarious.
Just on the lookout for people anti-U2 sentiment.
Okay, well, hold on. So you heard it as what?
U2 killed MTV.
It is YouTube.
That's the way it goes. That's what like I would have carried that around forever and be like, fuck you, Fall Out Boy.
That's fantastic. I love that.
See, this is okay. I feel better, I think.
I'm glad we got to solve that.
Yeah, I don't even know. I agree. Fall Out Boy.
Really dude, by the way, like as long as we're going on this tangent, I'm super excited about this. At the end of actually it's the first weekend in February, I'm heading out to Vegas. I'm going to see U2 at the Sphere.
Oh my god, that's amazing!
I'm so excited for this.
Oh wow, I don't know why this. So I met my wife at a U2 concert. In the lottery system, that band means a great deal to both of us, and we've gone as far. We went and saw the Joshua Tree get performed in Ireland in 2017, but for whatever, well, I was gonna say for whatever reason, I think I do know why. We had a difficult 2023, and Larry Mullen Jr. isn't in the band at the moment for health reasons, so I think that kept us from the Sphere. But
Yeah.
I'm so psyched that you're going to that. Wow.
Yeah, I can't. I'm so excited. And I've never seen them live before, so it's one of those
Oh,
like bucket lists I've been meaning to check off for a while.
okay, so I want to give you your due with the Billy Joel, and then maybe we'll have to talk about the that pair of U2 albums real quickly.
Okay.
All right, so Billy Joel, I don't know like I can be dense about a lot of things, and for whatever reason, I equate this with Billy Joel kind of similarly to how I confuse or have historically confused San Diego and San Francisco in my little mind. They're very far apart and probably very different, but I'm so geographically willfully ignorant or whatever that they both have sand and they're in California. And so in this way, I have when I was younger, I always confused Elton John and Billy Joel. And for whatever reason, don't have a great deal of fondness for either of them. Oh, this is ridiculous. It's based on nothing really. I got no I don't just it's just a dickish thing that I have that hopefully I'll let go of over time. I've got really no like hook to hang this beef on. I it just is there. But anyway, I'm I'm pretty malleable here, so that seemed to offend you. So help me. Turn me right around on this.
Maybe it was a lyric that you heard wrong way back in the day.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. It's more similar to the Fall Out Boy kind of like amorphous thing that's unjustified and it's petty. Tell me, like, it sounds as though you have you do have some affection for Billy Joel, which as do most people. So maybe just tell me a little bit more about what you like in him.
Yeah. So I I don't know. I know like he's been one of my favorite artists for probably as long as I can remember. And I know I know exactly the thing that got me into him. But so, so
You're gonna tell me, right? Because
yes,
that's
yeah,
what will do it. Yeah.
yeah. So when I was a kid, I had like a little almost toy like when those Fisher Price record player things, if you remember those from way back in the day.
I think I
Um,
do. Yeah.
yeah, and I had just like this stack of like 45s and stuff, and that my dad gave me, and then I had a few like full on LPs that were my own, that parents gave me and whatnot, and then one of them was God. Let me see if I can find like this actual album. One of them was The Chipmunks Go Punk or something like
What?
that. Yes.
I'm into this on general principle. This is
Yeah, yes. It was the Chipmunk Punk album. It was,
whoa.
um, yeah, and yeah, like look at the track list. It's a like "Let's Go" by the Cars, "Good Girls Don't" by the Knack, "Refugee" from Tom Petty. Like, granted, none of these are punk songs, but
Ah.
I don't know why the Chipmunks consider this to be punk. But Blondie was on there. Queen, My Sharona, and "You May Be Right" by Billy Joel. It's good gear. What can I tell you, man?
Yeah, that's an imperial. This is gonna be a great talk.
Yeah, it's a 13 percenter,
I
bro.
know. I was like, well, I'll probably have
Yeah,
to get a second to keep up.
yeah. But "You May Be Right" by Billy Joel was on there, and like I remember, like when I was a kid, I wore this album out. Like I listened to it a ton. But I'm a young kid. I'm also too young to really. I think I'm probably too young to really understand that these aren't their own original songs.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right,
Yeah.
right, yeah. So then it's later on over the years, as I hear these songs like out in the wild, like from the real artists, there's like that weird spark of memory that goes, where do I know this from? And it honestly wasn't until decades later when I would hear these songs and go like, I figured out why I knew these songs to begin with and why I'm such a big fan of them. But yeah, so like ever since that, I was a big fan of that particular Billy Joel song, and it's probably still my favorite song of his. And that then got me into more of his catalog. And like I remember rocking Billy Joel cassette tapes when I when I was much younger, and yeah, like granted, it's not that it's not what I listen to all the time now, but like whenever I hear Billy Joel, like I'm never gonna turn it off. I always have a big affection for it. And I got to see him live, yeah, probably like 7 or 8 years ago now, and it still blew me away. He sounded amazing. So yeah, there's I like it.
Oh, I like well that helps. Yeah, I actually am finding that I'm softening over the years. Against what? I still don't know. My my wife really likes uh, is it something Saigon? What's
Yeah,
the
good night,
Good
Saigon.
Night Saigon? Yeah, she
Yeah,
really likes that,
that is a great song. Yes.
and she's like you and your Billy Joel thing is so stupid. I was like, I know. Thank you. This helped chip away at it. But okay, Songs of Innocence and Experience. Let me know. Do you remember that? Like I've been mad about it for years, but you probably forgotten all about it.
I forgot about this conversation until now, but now
I
I
don't
do
think
remember
I don't think we ever had it, but I was like, one of these days I'm gonna let him know.
it. Did we talk about this, or maybe just
No, maybe
emailed
we
or
did. I don't
something? Or
know. I don't
I
know if I
don't
would have
remember
felt,
now.
but yeah. So tell
I
me,
loved "Songs of Innocence." I think
yes,
that's a great album. The follow up I didn't care for that much. That was "Songs of Experience," right?
yeah, and I want to say it was like 2014 and
Yeah, somewhere
like
around there. Yeah, because
16 or
like the first one
17.
was the one that they gave away for free
Oh
on
yeah,
iTunes or something.
we're
Yeah,
so mad about that for fuck's
right. Yeah,
sake.
angered everybody. Now I was like, oh, let me actually go listen to this album. I loved it.
I'm gonna get the years on these real quick.
Uh,
So yeah, Innocence 2014, Experience 2017. So the thing that caught my attention that I was annoyed about was you're like, oh, they're even recycling some music or something like that. And I knew just what you meant, but I guess I saw it differently. But so do you remember that part? Do you remember
I
the
I do remember that part. Yeah, yeah.
and so it felt like too they were just like, well, what? Yeah, tell me.
I think in my mind, I think "Songs of Innocence" to me sounded very fresh. And I don't know if innovative is the right word, but like it sounded very fresh. It sounded like them just like really making something new, something fresh, like um something relevant to the time period. And then "Songs of Experience," at least to my ears, sort of sounded like um and there's a lot of bands that do it, like just off the top of my head, Metric did it this year, and I included one of their songs on my mix, where like they put out a really good album last year, and then this year they put out the sequel to that album, which sort of sounds like it's just a bunch of songs that didn't make the cut from that first album. And like
Ah,
that's sort of what "Songs of Experience" sounded like to me. And I could be completely off base on that. Um, and I'm fine with material being reused in a purposeful way. So like I listen to a fair amount of prog rock, and like some bands will do that. Like let's take the Deer Hunter, for example. One of my favorite bands. They had a 5 album series of where all 5 albums were connected by a broad story arc, and they would bring in like little bits of like lyrical elements or melodic elements from previous albums and work it into a song on a later album and stuff, just to sort of bring that through line of the story thread in through it. And like I really appreciate when bands do that. um I didn't, and maybe that's what U2 was doing, but like at least in my first listen, it didn't feel like that to me. Like I didn't get the through line between the 2 albums. And to be fair, I haven't gone back and given "Songs of Experience" a proper listen, and given it another chance. Like it just nothing on the album really struck me as I don't know what I said, but Siri like activated itself just now.
Oh, yeah, you can't talk bad about you two around Apple
Yeah,
products.
apparently so. But yes, nothing on Songs of Experience really grabbed me as much as the music on Songs of Innocence, and to me it sort of felt like stuff that didn't make the cut for the initial album, and it sort of felt like just extra stuff, and it just, I don't know, it didn't really grab me that much.
Yeah, actually, that does make sense, and I'm sure that does happen. Um, I one of the reasons why and I really love what you do, where you're like kind of always listening to new albums, and I love the attention that you give them when they catch you and stuff like that. For whatever reason, I've never really done that, but I've always just like dug deep into like catalogs, and I do this with filmmakers too. That's just like, as a creative person trying to figure out like how to make my own stuff, and as a musician trying to eventually find a voice, because I had a kind of, at a young age, had a gift for mimicry. But I always like longed to have something that sounded like myself. I was always interested, and I still am so interested in how people sort of translate their feelings and ideas into stuff, into original work. So I tend to like really follow people's careers, and I notice I love to read like what they're going for and all this stuff. Um, and so U2 is one of those like bands that I read so very much about and seen, like I just really followed super closely. And uh Songs of Innocence, so I love almost all of U2's music, like so much. And it connected me to some of my most dearest friendships, and it was responsible for me meeting my wife like 18 years ago. And um their album, 2009 album, No Line on the Horizon, is the only one where I'm just like, ooh, that doesn't connect for me. And the reason is that the lyrics for me are just like disconnected from they just seem like super impersonal and not very meaningful. And I knew a lot about like where this band came from. They came from like they formed when they were in their early teens, and with through these kind of like crucibles of life together, and have hung together all this time. And they had this like thing when they were kids. They kind of gave all these nicknames to each other, some of which are still adhered to, like Bono and The Edge. And they made up this kind of like fictional sort of they called themselves Lipton Village. And anyway, this all like kind of resonated and was mythologized, by them, but also kind of adopted by my young group of friends. So it all was just like, I was very familiar with that time. And Songs of Innocence, actually, they kind of go back to that time in their mind, and a lot of those. So it seemed to me that this, not only was it like super fresh and way better music than somebody at this point in their career should be making. Like I was just like, wow. Well, there's such a return to form after No Line on the Horizon. Um, but at that time, I was finishing an album of mine that became called The Furious Light, that was, marginally less successful than theirs. But,
It was close though.
yeah. But I was really struggling with having a title for the collection of songs, and I was seriously thinking about this uber pretentious thing of calling it Songs of Innocence and Experience, which is the get ready, everybody. I like, oh boy, like I'm just, this guy doesn't like Billy Joel. I'm about to lose everyone, but take a breath, brace yourself.
Ready?
It's all based on a William Blake collection, like this, like imagist. What do they call? What Wikipedia calls William Blake an English poet, painter, and printmaker, and from like the 1700s. Anyway, look him up. And I was this douchebag gonna call my album like Songs of Innocence and Experience. And then I'm like, I remember being on our back porch and seeing the announcement of U2's new album was gonna drop on all the iPads, and like Songs of Innocence. I'm like, what?
Have that.
Anyway, but artsy asshole that I am, like I had some context for where this was coming from, and I was just like, well, of course they'll have a Songs of Experience. And as I understood it, they they did have like an enormous amount of material around that time, and this kind of resurgence in the band and the urgency of the music and reflecting as they were. But that then a lot was going on in the world, between 2014 and 17.
Yeah,
And I
sure.
think they made a whole record that they kind of shelved, that they felt was not that was the kind of complement to that other thing, but it wasn't quite. It didn't feel. Um, I don't know. It did. They just felt like it wasn't the right thing to put out at that time.
Hmm.
And so they tweaked some things and made some more songs. But so the reason the recycling comment or whatever got me so much was like I felt that that was very deliberately like intentional, that in some ways it was like a double album, but
Yeah,
not as an afterthought, but as like a carefully constructed thing, so that when they're like repurposing um volcano lyrics and melodies like "you are rock and roll, you are rock and roll," and they put that into American Soul. I think that that was all very intentional and very exciting
yeah.
then for me as a U2 geek and artsy assholes, I explained. So at the same time, you know that can all be going on and not resonate with somebody, and that's okay too. But
Yeah, and I'm sure you're correct. Like, but like your interpretation, I guarantee is right. Like it's there to serve a greater purpose and connect things with some sort of through line or whatever like that. But like when I was listening, I just didn't get that. It didn't hit me for whatever reason. Um, and I'm uh, I think a less intentional consumer of music than you are. It sounds like in that like if I'll listen to something, if it doesn't hit me right away, I have a hard time going back to it. And I think part of it is just because like I'm like what we talked about before. Like I'm always just seeking out new stuff and bringing in as much content to listen to as possible. And I don't really do a great job of this is like the double-edged sword, I think, of Spotify and streaming. Because I love it in that if there's something that you and I talk about or something I find on a website or something I just sort of stumble upon, I'm already paying the $10 a month. It doesn't cost me any extra money to go check out the album and listen to that thing in context with everything that it was released with. And maybe I'll discover a new album I really like. Maybe I'll discover a new band I really like. But I'm doing that enough to the point where I'm not really necessarily devoting enough time to then go back to that thing and listen to it a bunch of times and really take it in or dive into the band's catalog like I probably would have done 10 years ago when most of my listening habits was on CD. Because then at that point I'm discovering a lot less stuff because there's more cost involved with listening to more bands and more artists and more albums. So I spent a lot more time on individual albums. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know which is better because like I've discovered so much more stuff, I think, through through modern methods, but I don't know if I connect with it as deeply as I used to. Man, we really went on a tangent here.
no, that's I'm here for it. I relate a lot, and actually I'm kind of the same way, especially now. Like I'll listen to an album once through, and if it doesn't, I'll be looking hard for those songs that
Yeah,
light me up. But if they don't grab me, then that's like it. And
yeah.
I think I have a lot more um investment in the ones that go in the bands where I go back further.
Hmm.
And I think so much about this. I heard Nick Hornby, the guy that wrote High Fidelity and a
Oh
bunch
yeah,
of
yeah.
great stuff. I heard him on the Nerdist podcast in the last few years of its existence, and he gave this analogy that made.
That podcast, by the
uh,
way. Yeah,
did you used to listen to that one?
yeah. I used to love it.
Yeah, I think there were so many that I would kind of cherry pick and I came to it late. I would cherry pick the people that I was most curious about. But he said this thing about um when you're young and it's like your brain is like this blank sheet of paper, and when you're young, people write or you write or people write their names on it in this way that takes up a certain amount of space, and maybe it's like a lot of space. So like Dylan is like big letters or something, and as you get older the page is kind of filled up, and the writing has to kind of get smaller. I don't know, I might be mixing the metaphor up a little bit, but it still makes a lot of sense. And I think so much about the things that I like when I was young that I return to. It's like to a certain degree, it is about those films, music, whatever it is, but also it's about a kind of a yearning for me to just to return to the way that I felt then, which can never like be the same. I don't know. So it's like I give a lot of latitude to like a band like U2, and but at the same time um I I do experience music in a very similar way as you described now, where I might not give it a lot of chances, but yeah, I just hold tight, I guess, to those things that pop out, which are what make it onto these mix albums ultimately.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, like I'm assuming if both of us were to sit here and rattle off our top 10 or 20 albums ever, a very significant percentage of those would probably have been released when we were in high school or early college
Yeah,
or something
yep.
along those lines. But and I think part of the issue too now is just like the older we get, the more busy we get with other things. Whereas when we were younger, we might throw on that CD and just really like pull out the booklet and like read along with it and just like
Hmm.
really dive into it. Whereas now, is anytime I'm listening to something, I'm doing something else in addition to listening. I'm working, I'm driving, I'm working on some sort of project or something along those lines. So it's like it's almost like a song has to try harder to get my attention than it used to. It's yeah, so it's I don't know. I have a harder time latching on to something now than I think I used to. And I'm also the kind of person that will tend to, which is ironic because lyrics are the thing that I struggle with and agonize with the most as a songwriter. But it's also the thing that I notice last when I'm listening to a song. So usually it's the music and the melodies that will latch onto my brain and like give me that earworm, and then that causes me to go back and listen to it. Maybe on the fifth or sixth time I'll listen to a song, I'll then pay attention to the lyrics. But
Hmm.
I tend to not notice those at first. It takes me a while to notice that part of it.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I find that, yeah, but I'm very focused that way for whatever reason. I just realized we're only up to number three, but it's a great transition.
Yeah, we're not really making it through the album very well, but good
No,
discussions though, I think.
no. Well, so my number three is from a band called Inhaler, a song called Perfect Storm, but the band is fronted and the singer is Bono's son.
Oh, no kidding. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Which I was into. So U2 has a channel on Sirius XM, and this band came up there, and I was like, oh, cool. I should check them out because I don't know. It's weird. It's like being so lyrically focused, and I'm always so interested like where the singer is coming from about that whole relationship of like trying to translate ideas and stuff. So I think it's a song from Songs of Experience. I think it's called Love is Bigger Than Anything in Its Way. That can't possibly be the full title. But there's a line in there where he's like, so young, Bono saying, so young to be the words of your own song. I know the rage in you is strong, all this. And I knew he was singing about his son. And at the same time, I all that makes a lot of sense for me. And so I relate to that as well. But I always had this idea of like whatever it is that his relationship with his son is, and always been curious about that. Um, dynamic, and then as his son's like becoming a singer in a band himself. But yeah, so I listened to their I can't remember what the Inhaler album is called. But this song jumped out at me and I just loved it. And it's just a pretty straightforward like lovers choral song that I just yeah, it was sort of irresistible, and I was really glad that listening to that record that's what I mean. It's like I listen to these things on a whim or a hope or a prayer. It's like that something will kind of, resonate with me. And this one it did. It just so I don't have too much to say about it beyond that, other than like I was like, oh, great.
All right.
This will
That's
do.
so that I recognize the band name, but I've never listened to anything by them, and maybe it's because of the relation to Bono that might be why I recognized it. And so I'd kind of noted to myself on this song that like it was very catchy. I like the song a lot. So I kind of like just made a note to myself, check out the rest of the rest of the album, check out the rest of the band stuff. But not, yeah, knowing that now, that's yeah, that's very cool. I definitely liked that song a lot though.
So I might transition us to four myself just because there's a similar kind of thread to, but it's another Irish band.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of half and half, but it's also very much based in a kind of a historical thing for me and about the group itself. So the song is called "The Answer Is Yes" by the band The Swell Season, which is Glen Hansard and Marketa Irglova. Glen Hansard is an Irish singer-songwriter who fronted the Frames I mentioned earlier, and Marketa Irglova is Czech, and they happened to star together in a film called Once that sort of took the world by storm in the mid 2000s, and their song Falling Slowly. And so I had a history with this band. It was maybe the last group that for me felt like a discovery. I was never the one to like be in a position to say like I knew this band when, before they were cool. Uh this would be the exception to that because I had seen the Frames open for Damien Rice at the that Odeon show I mentioned and was so taken with them, and then just became really interested in their music. And the group was much more successful in Ireland. I think in Ireland, I think Damien Rice sort of made his sort of name opening for the Frames. It was kind of a different relationship.
Hmm.
Um, but then so I remember seeing Glenn and Marquetta play. Well, I went to see them play in New York 2 nights in a row, and this was 2006. Friends of mine were also into them, and we made this kind of road trip. One of my buddies, Jackson, was living in New York, and we could stay with him, which was great. Um, but we saw them in places like, I don't know, clubs like you or I would play, on occasion, and, kind of chatted with them afterwards a little bit, and like they were playing some Frame songs. They didn't have that many songs they did together, and they said, "Oh, we just made this little movie." Um, and incidentally, if you didn't know, John Carney, who directed that film, used to be in the Frames, the band, when they were first signed to Island Records in like the early '90s. Their first record was '92, I think. Um, Actually, in Pulp Fiction, one of the characters that, like in the Rosanna Arquette scene, where Uma Thurman ultimately ends up having to get the the injection into her heart, she's wearing a Frame shirt. One of the
Oh,
characters there.
huh.
So for whatever reasons, the Frames never kind of became huge, but the Swell season did. And it was interesting to kind of I saw them one year like in those tiny clubs, and then once came out, and the next year I saw them there in a theaters, and it just kept growing and growing from there. And so this song, I think was a new song to be released in conjunction with this kind of reunion tour of Glenn and Marquetta. And the lyrics, if you listen to them, I think are like super autobiographical in what they're talking about in terms and so I don't relate to the sentiment necessarily myself, but to me it's just like this beautiful encapsulation of like their relationship. There's a documentary called The Swell Season that feels like this like real life sequel to the film Once, in which they become an actual couple in real life, and then they go on this whirlwind tour and win an Oscar and have this incredible Oscar moment. Um, and you see them kind of break up on camera in this thing, and it's like I don't know. So it's just it's really beautiful. It almost seems to me like the little movie that plays in my head was like none of this is based on fact. This is my conjecture based on the lyrics. This is the movie I'm making out of this song. Is that like Glenn had this idea because Glenn has stayed super active as a solo singer or songwriter, and I like to think that he initiated this tour and approached Marquetta, and it was like her saying like, well, yeah, of course, because when they first like started making music together, I think she might have still been in her late teens or something. And so that when she sings about like you were the first person to see like a spark in me and all this, and I don't know, it's really beautiful and great to see them kind of move into different phases of their life, still in each other's lives and still kind of sharing their music with people like me that value it so much. And also I think there is something that resonates with me about the sort of power of yes. Like I've just like not yeah, I've just been like, yeah, let's do this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And But yeah, so for me, so much of what appeals to me about that song, beyond it's the melodies and stuff like that, is the history it carries with it between the singers.
Wow. No, that's cool to hear all of that. And so my first listen of that initially, like the first 30 to 60 seconds, I was like, I don't know if I'm really feeling this. And it was I don't know, it was something about the voice, I think that was just that wasn't that was maybe rubbing me a little bit the wrong way. But then like as the song progressed and it got into that chorus and then kind of picked up a little bit more and just like I found myself like really captivated by it. And ironically, out of everything that's on the mix, this was the one that I found getting stuck in my head after I was done listening to it. Like a day later, like just like the melody of the chorus would be stuck in my head. I'm like, what is that? I'm like, oh, that's from Ullman's mix. So
Yeah.
yeah, I I think this is one of my favorite songs on that on your mix.
Oh wow, that's great. Yeah, I can't recommend looking into their music enough. If you like this, I mean, there's a lot of great songs.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the Swell season being on several mixes in the past and liking everything that I've heard as well too. And I have not done a good job of following up and diving into it afterward. But I remember every time I hear it on one of your mixes that I end up really liking it.
The Swell Season is the name of the first album that they made together. Like that album when it came out, it wasn't called like the band wasn't called the
Okay.
Swell Season. It was just like it listed every musician's name. It was like as the but I think if you look it up now and like on streaming services, like it's those songs that were ended up in the film once and all this, and it's
Okay.
yeah, I think they only have two really. There's that and then one called Strict Joy, and both are great. Probably the first one is really special though.
I'll have to look for that film too. I've never
Oh,
seen that.
it's so good. Yeah, and it's like semi-autobiographical as well about um the Glen Hansard, the singer. He was a busker on the streets of Dublin and all that, and he kind of plays a version of himself in the
Yeah.
film. And it's funny, like the film being directed by, as he put it, like essentially the first guy to leave his band would kind of come around and show him the greatest success. And yeah, yeah, a lot of great stuff to mine there.
Yeah.
How about number four? Speaking of great stuff, number four for on your mix is one of the ones I was like, download this, old man.
Oh yeah.
Loved it. Yeah.
That's cool. Um, yeah, number four on mine is the Beaches. It's a song called Blame Brett. They're a band that I it's no secret I love Canadian music. I think we talked
I
about it
love that. I love it.
earlier. Yeah. Um, and there's a channel on Sirius Radio that's all Canadian stuff. So I will listen to that periodically. And the Beaches were a band that I discovered from that. They haven't been around for very long. I think they only have maybe two albums or something. But everything I've heard has been awesome. And this particular album, e- every song, to bring it back, every song is a banger.
Yes.
Yeah. It's it just like there's not a bad song on this album. Everything is just it, and it's like this. It's all fun. It's upbeat. It's catchy. It's stuff that's gonna put you in a good mood while you're listening to it. You're gonna smile. You're gonna smile. You're gonna nod your head. You're gonna kind of dance a little bit. Like it's just such a fun album. Um, and I loved this song too. Reading up on it for the mix, I didn't even know what it was about until I started typing up the notes. I just included it because it was the first song I heard off the album and the one that just really stuck in my mind the most. But so it's actually about her breakup with the lead singer from the Glorious Sons, which is another band that I like, and another band that I featured on a previous mix too.
Yeah.
Go figure. But it's essentially just her kind of saying like it's what she say. There's a quote that I included in there, but she said it was something to the effect of basically her explaining to any future lovers that like hey, I'm gonna be a bit of an asshole for a little while. I'm dealing with all this stuff, and like hey, don't blame me, blame my ex. So, which and she had apparently even reached out to the dude from Glorious Sons just to say like hey, I'm gonna use your name in this track. Is it cool? And he's like, are you sure?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
She's like, yeah, yeah, it sounds good. I like the alliteration. I'm like, all right, fine, go ahead and use it. So she got the permission. But yeah, it's just such a fun song and a fun album. I highly recommend giving the full album a listen to.
Very cool. Yeah, I was very struck by that one.
Yeah,
Let's see, number four or oh no, we're going on to five. Five for me is Running with Our Eyes Closed from Jason
yeah. You
Isbell
you
and
you
the
got this
400
band on
unit.
here twice too.
Yeah, so I'm always on the lookout for music that will, mean something to me. And like I said, I put a lot of pressure on it. And I remember Jason Isbell, like he's got one really beloved record for a lot of people that I think I tried around 2013, 14 and just wasn't whatever reason it didn't connect with me. Um and I'm not sure if I'd heard something or what drove me to it, but there was a documentary called Running with Our Eyes Closed on Max, HBO Max or whatever it's called. And it's directed by the same dude that made the Wilco documentary I'm Trying to Break Your Heart that I really like. And so I tried it and for whatever reason I didn't have an especially open mind. I kind of came into it a little like a I was like I was not predisposed to be in on it, but I was quickly like this song kind of kicks it off, them recording this song, and then the documentary unfolds, and I was just like by the end of it, I was full on just like Jason Isbell fan. I was like, this guy is great. And so I sought out the album that was from called Reunions, which I remember liking several things off of. I just especially like this song, and he'll come up one other time, but I think one of the things that I really appreciate is like, so I'm 44 now, and I mentioned being so lyrically focused. It's like not a lot of pop music is really geared at like middle-aged dudes. If you're thinking
Yeah,
about the content of it. um
yeah. I would agree with that for
yeah.
sure.
I'm sure there's more than I'm aware of. But one of the things I really appreciate about his work at this point is he's singing about things that resonate for me and that I also struggle with, and so I can kind of get from the music some of that I don't know, validation, commiseration, just identification that is often missing in newer younger groups. So yeah, I was really glad to have stumbled across that documentary and to actually have stuck with it past my preconceptions, and now I've got like a new artist that I really enjoy.
You want to combine this one with your track nine?
Oh,
You want
sure,
to go ahead
yeah.
and song?
So that was the track 9 is also from Jason Isbell and the 400 unit from their most recent album called Weather Vanes, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and it's called Death Wish. And if I had a complaint otherwise about Mr. Isbell, it would be that he falls into a category of singers that for me is not sort of passionate enough. I love rock singers, I like big singers. Like, and that's what I always aspire to myself. And so if you get a singer that's kind of like that just never really sings out, I can roll with that to a certain extent, but that's just something that I really like and not something I'd heard from him prior to this. And so when he belts this song out, if you have you ever loved a woman with a death wish, and it's just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And it's, oh man, this song is like, oh, I mean, this is a banger. Oh,
I love that we have the running theme now for for this talk.
bangers, bangers and mash. It's just
Yeah.
like,
If there's a title for this podcast
yeah,
episode.
bangers and mash. Mix albums 2023. But yeah, no, I really love it. And unfortunately, if there is a theme kind of running through my mix album this year, it's this my wife and I experienced a lot of loss, people dying and anyway, so the hearing this kind of, I mean, like, I think I would have loved this song the way that it sounds and the energy that infuses it regardless, but the things that he's singing about trying to support a spouse through grief, it's just like Jesus. So
It's
I can't
a
recommend
cool song.
that highly enough. Yeah.
Yeah. I listened to that album this year too. And I was trying to figure out where I had first heard of Jason Isbell from, and I think it might have been, it was either from you or one of my other friends. Um, one of the, or possibly both. But so I know at some point several years ago somebody recommended Jason Isbell to me, and I know like I had heard a couple of songs and I liked what I heard, but I never really dove into it. And then this was another one of those, like just kind of going on that website that I talked about and seeing like, oh, Jason Isbell has something new coming out. I'll give that a listen. And yeah, I really love that Weather Vanes album. It's such a good album. And I came really close to including Save the World
Oh,
from that
yeah.
album on my mix.
I know. Yep, that's a
Yeah,
killer song.
yeah, I just it ended up having to cut that one out for time purposes. But yeah, I really liked this song too. I think this was the opener for that album, and I don't know if I necessarily like. I listened to it, I really liked it, but then I think like when I heard it on your mix, I'm like I'm gonna listen to this a little bit deeper than I did initially, and paid a lot more attention to the lyrics and just like again, yeah, this is very powerful, like just deep song.
Yeah. Yeah, I was so thrilled with. I mean, the reunion, the documentary and the reunions album. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, let's see what this guy does next. And then I play this album. I'm like, holy shit! It's like, okay. Oh, so I'm glad you were into it too. That Save the World song. It's like written from the perspective of a parent trying to send kids to school in an age where that can be a pretty harrowing thing. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, wow.
Yeah, that did end up being an album that I went back to a couple of times over the course of the year and listened to and re-listened to, and that is a really good album,
Making me want to go back too. I
right?
just realized that number 5 for you, Noel Gallagher. When we saw U2 play their Joshua Tree tour in 2017 in Ireland, the opener was Noel Gallagher and the
No way!
High Flying.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. What year did you say that was?
I think it was 2017.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember like the songs super well. I made a little note here to have a rant. Oh no, wait, never mind. That's coming up. I thought it was about the U2 thing. This is something else. Liner notes. But, yeah. So I mostly check in with him as an artist through your mix, actually, through your mixes like over the years.
Yeah, because yeah, I've been including him on a lot of my mixes pretty much every time. I think Noel Gallagher is to me what Glen Hansard is to you
Oh,
probably.
nice.
So
Yeah, I
just,
like
yeah,
this.
like I love everything the guy has ever done. And he's been a huge influence on my writing and playing as well. And just and yeah, like yeah, so like this newest album that he put out, it's I also appreciate that each one of his albums post Oasis and really with Oasis too. Like no two Oasis albums necessarily sounded exactly the same, and it's been the same with his solo records as well. Um, Whereas the last full length album was very experimental, and then this album isn't really all that experimental, but it's very down tempo. It's very ballad heavy, and just and but it's just a pleasant listen. Like every song is just it's just a nice, pleasant song. And this particular song, just I love the chorus on it. I love the guitar tone on that on that solo is just such. I love that tone. I love that solo. It's probably my favorite solo out of any of his recordings. Um, yeah, and this year he was touring with Garbage and Metric together on the pretty big mega bill, which is the three bands that I absolutely love, which naturally didn't come to Cleveland because nothing ever comes to Cleveland, and so I was trying to figure out where to go to travel to see the show. I ended up settling on Detroit. And made a whole weekend out of it. It was kind of nice. Like I drove up to Detroit, saw them at Pine Knob Amphitheater, which I go on a huge rant about about Pine Knob versus the outdoor venue that we have here in Cleveland, which is Blossom, which absolutely sucks. And I loved everything about Pine Knob. So
I
if
loved that rant. I have so many notes on that paragraph, which is like probably a page and a half of stuff. And I think I put somewhere on the second page, I was because I think I read it in 2 or 3 sittings, that your liner notes. And I
yeah,
was like, I forgot which band this is about, and I don't care. This is like a what is this?
it's
Oh.
hilarious.
Anyway, I was just so sucked in to the voice that you were, writing in, and what you were going on about. And I thought about, the handful of concerts I saw there. Um, I've saw, yeah, but it's very few, and it was all in a really concentrated period of time. I saw Pearl Jam like in maybe the third row in 1998 at Blossom. Also, Dave Matthews Band that year. My favorite album of theirs is For These Crowded Streets, so that was pretty cool. And then I saw Jewel in 99. And I think John Mayer in 2004 in one of those like orchestra shows. And then that's it for whatever reason. Uh, I think my brother saw Nine Inch Nails in 2005, like on their With Teeth tour, which is so fucking
Oh
badass
wow,
that
that'd be cool.
I think I insert myself into that memory, even though I wasn't there. but I can't recommend enough. Like I really love your liner notes in general, but this whole thing just as are all the trips. Like when you recount your trips, I don't know. It all just seems so great. Building your life or your schedule around these shows, and I can't recommend highly enough. If anyone is hearing this somehow and like enjoying it, that you gotta check out Kevin's like proper liner notes for these things. They're such a delight.
Yeah, definitely please do. Yeah, I won't go into tons and tons of detail now on it, but yeah, like there's a lot of time, a lot of words spent shitting on Blossom and talking up this pine knob.
When did Pine Knob come about? That doesn't ring a bell for me.
I honestly don't know. Yeah, I don't know how long they've been around. But man, it is a beautiful venue. It really is. I can't recommend it enough. And I can't shit on Blossom enough either.
That idea of taking that long to get out of there really, I don't remember it specifically. It's kind of a thing that I've experienced about I don't go almost, and part of the reason I think I really enjoy your recounting of these things is that I don't really go to concerts anymore for whatever reason. That's not to say I never would or will. I just haven't for a few years. My wife and I go to a lot of baseball games. She got really into baseball and kind of brought me along with her. And then a friend of ours we went with one time basically showed us this place you can park if you go to the right top of the one parking garage for the Twin Stadium, to where we just get out so easily. We make our one turn, even though we've got like a 45-minute drive home. It's just so easy. And then uh going to anywhere else and then it takes forever to get out. We're just like furious about it. So when you say it takes 2 hours to get out of there, just like my hackles went up. I was like, no, fuck that.
Yep. Right.
Well,
But yeah, I do like over the last couple of years, I've really kind of shifted around a lot of priorities and sort of rediscovered my love of traveling. And to the point that you made a little bit earlier, like a lot of these shows that are coming through that I want to see don't stop at Cleveland. Cleveland, it's just not we're not a great destination for a lot of tours. So if I want to go see them, a lot of times I need to travel. But it's an opportunity to make like a whole weekend out of it or something, and just kind of turn it into a vacation. Sure, it's centered around going to a show, but then I'm always going to book a few extra nights and just kind of hang out in whatever city it is and walk around and explore whatever. It doesn't matter to me if anybody's going with me. Most of the time, people aren't, and it's usually just me. But I love doing that kind of stuff, and yeah, anytime I get the chance to do that, I really enjoy it.
so I'm seeing at the end of one of my other notes at some point in your thing was that I just put I this novella is glorious because it's so long. But I was just so into it. But at the end of it, you say, incidentally, I didn't really think about it until just now, but I ended up visiting 4 out of the 5 Great Lakes this year. Kind of
Yeah,
cool. I guess I need to go up to Superior next year to complete the collection, which, of course, a lot of Minnesota. That's the lake here most accessible in Minnesota. So I just encourage you there. Maybe we can build one of these weekends. I can get me out to a concert too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned baseball, and I'm also a huge baseball fan. So like
Yeah.
maybe we could find a weekend when the guards are in town or
Yes.
something.
Yeah, and yes, we that's a favorite too. Is Tito still? No, wait, no, Tito.
He retired,
Yes,
yeah, at the
yeah,
end of last year.
right. We still though. There's a lot of affection. For the well, we Susie had for Tito especially, and it was
Yeah, so,
difficult to follow the team for a number of years, but now it's a little easier. So that would be really cool, actually.
yeah,
Yeah, gotta happen.
yeah, absolutely.
The next song for me is Good Old Boys Like Me by the
Yeah.
Allman Boys, which is the sort of family band that I'm a part of that is largely headed up in Rittman, Ohio, by my brother Brian, the producer, and plays a lot of the things, but it's centered around the two generations of Allman Brothers, he and me, him and me and him, as well as our dad and our Uncle Jack, his brother. Very unexpectedly and sadly, Jack passed away last year.
Oh,
Basically after
sorry.
finish. Thank you. Yeah, we've basically finished all of the songs that were going to be this collection, and he got sick and died in a couple of weeks, and
Oh, wow.
um, so the album became a bit of a like yeah, like dedicated to him. But my brother also went to the trouble of he had produced an album for my Uncle Jack in 2018, just called Jack Allman Friends and Family. Uh and then we kind of into the then they basically brought me into the fold, and we created things together in a more intentional way in what became Family Album by the Allman Boys that was released in 2022, and then 2023 was this Family Album 2. And so we had this idea that we would just like keep going with these things that had the artwork is like looks like a family photo album, in particular these two that I remember growing up with that I used to look at as a kid. So the first one has this red cover, and the second one is this blue cover, and in the middle there's the big kind of cutout of the name Almond, and then underneath are like these photo montages. And I really enjoyed putting that packaging together to kind of match the music. And then um yeah, I don't know if he'd planned it prior to my uncle's passing or if that brought some gravitas to the whole thing, but my brother wanted to have these exist as physical media as well. And as it turned out, so my uncle was a big Steelers fan and Pirates. He liked the Pittsburgh teams. And so as it turned out, this was kind of a coincidence, but also something of a tribute that his album had this like yellow background, which at the time for me was intentional as I was trying to figure out in 2018 like what to do visually. We had this one photograph of him holding the guitar, and I was like, so it was this kind of the yellow album, and then the first family album had a red cover because that's the clip art I found online. uh that I could kind of modify to be the thing. And then the second one was the blue, and in my mind we would just keep doing different colors, and that way every time there was a new collection of songs, largely covers but increasingly like some originals here and there, we could just kind of put it out under that name and tweak it and have this growing library. And so um, my brother had them manufactured. So if you go to dreamingoutloudrecords.com and slash merch, you can see, and I just sell them for like $1 or whatever, but
Oh, wow.
I think you have to sell it for something. But yeah, I expanded the designs to have these kind of digipack fold outs, and next year, so we just in the last couple of days submitted. So all of this started to happen with my uncle and my dad in their high school like garage band, um, called the Bushmen in the '60s, and the Bushmen were never wrote songs or anything like that. But when I was in a position to do so in my own sort of fledgling music career, I would kind of feature them, and they kind of reunited and all this, and would play these shows, and it was great. And unfortunately, it was after my uncle's passing, but I basically, my dad wrote a song for their guitarist called Salt Street Skinny, which I shouldn't talk too much about. I'm sure that will be on my next year's mix. But yeah, that'll be like the latest in this kind of this legacy recording thing. Um, but I particularly like this song. It's a Don Williams, I think is the artist, but my dad just tweaked the lyrics so to kind of reflect his relationships like with his brothers and switched whatever the family name in the Don Williams song to Ullman Boys, and then it kind of coincided with like our little band name. And yeah, I don't know, I just really like it, and so I included it.
Yeah, no, it is a very nice song. I didn't know it was a cover until you said that. I assumed it was one that you guys had written. But yeah, it is a very nice song. I notated for myself that I was also really impressed with the production value on it as well too.
Oh yeah, thank you. My brother does, yeah. Beautiful work in that regard. It's ever evolving and improving, but it's long been pretty stellar. How about the next song for you?
Oh yeah, so okay, so yeah, so my song six was the rural ed I have a tough time saying the name of this band name. Rural Alberta Advantage. I don't know what it is about the word rural. It's hard to say that. um, so I like to just abbreviate it to RAA. They're kind of like this like I don't even really know how to describe their music. Like sort of punky, sort of folky, like somewhere in between. Um, but just like a good folk rockish band out of Canada. Again, the Canada theme keeps coming up. They're a band that I discovered on that Sirius radio station a couple years back, and they put out a new album this year. They did the thing where like it seems like more and more bands will release a single, and then that single will be a part of an EP like 6 months later, and then that EP will be a part of a full length album 6 months later. So it's such a elongated process these days with releasing music, and like I don't know if I don't know if I like it. This is my old fandom.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because I'm like you. I like listening to an album, and like I want that album to come out and like and just be. I want to be able to put it on and just not know anything about it ahead of time. Just take it all in. And nowadays, I sound very old saying that. It feels like you almost get the at least half, if not more, of the album being released in singles and EPs and stuff leading up to the album. But I don't know. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. I got to see these guys finally. I've been wanting to see them for years. I got to see them finally at the Beachland earlier this year, and Beachland is. I don't know if you ever been to that venue when you
Oh
were,
yeah. Yeah, I
but
used to, that was like that was the place like the my dream to play there, you know?
yeah,
That's for sure. And I managed to get this advice for, I think still probably holds for any aspiring musicians, but uh I didn't want to approach them until I felt like I could like deliver, you know, on a turnout, because that's what venues are in the business of. Um, so to get on their radar, at some point I saw they had a street team or something, so I'm like, oh, so I asked about joining it to hang up posters, and I figured that by doing that, in a few years when I felt like I could ask, they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, we know you. You help us out from time to time, sure. But that happened like within a month.
oh
They,
wow,
yeah, I didn't even ask that. I can't remember how it happened. And so I ended up getting to sort of have a relationship with that club, and it was great. And I'm very fond of it. I only played the ballroom itself one time, but I played the tavern a lot. But
okay.
yeah, your note about the sound, I wonder if, yeah, I wonder if that's just based on what you get with these kind of situations where you have some house engineers and maybe one is more invested or skilled than another, or if like
Yeah.
different bands bring their own engineers. Not sure how that
I,
goes.
yeah, I think it's a mixture of that, and I have talked to a couple of people that have confirmed for me that I guess that room inside the ballroom is a bit hard to mix in, apparently.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, it's funny. One of talking about playing there. I've also only played the ballroom once, and that was in my old band, Highball. We booked a show there to release our one and only album. But that was a fun time. It was us, and we had second half was on the bill with us. I don't know if you remember them at all.
Mm.
And I think there was another band too, but I can't remember who the third band was. I know it was definitely the two of us. And then we played the back with that same band. We played with in the tavern a couple of times. One time it was a Christmas show. Man, we did a toga party there one time too. That was a lot of
Oh
fun.
wow.
Yeah. But the most infamous one was a Christmas show we booked there. It was us and Jaded Era.
Oh, I
You
remember
remember
that
them?
name.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
And they were awesome. They were such a good band. Well polished, way more well polished than we were. But we had gotten ridiculously drunk prior to going on stage for the show, and like I remember there was a song where I think we were doing a Trans-Siberian Orchestra cover, and like I was pulling out the keyboard and trying to play like piano for this song, and like I'm not the best piano player by any means, but like I could chunk away at some chords, right? And like that's all that this required. And I distinctly remember like we sound checked with this, and like it sounded good, it sounded pretty good. um and then it gets time to actually play the show, and I'm at the point where I can barely stand up.
Oh my goodness. Oh
Yeah,
my
like
God.
this was bad. This is the
Wow.
most drunk I've ever been and going on stage. And I remember we opened with that song, and like I just like it was total like my fingers were like not seriously, not literally, but figuratively, it felt like just my hands were twice the size of that they normally were. And
Whoa.
every time they came down on the keyboard, I'm just hitting every key, and everything just sounds so dissonant and bad. And like I couldn't remember the words, so I'm literally holding up a CD booklet like in front of my face, trying to sing the song. And it's to this day the only show that we've ever played, and we were mind you, we were the headliners, we were the ones that booked the show. Like I was the one that booked everything. We got kicked off the stage by the security
Oh
because we were
my
too drunk.
God.
they,
That
they,
is
they
so
finally came up,
rock
they're
and
like, all
roll.
right, you guys need to end the show. It's so bad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is epic, man.
Right. So that's my playing experience with the Beachland. But yeah, like as a fan, like they're in the ballroom, it is super hit or miss as to whether or not the sound is going to be any good in there. But like, man, for that Rural Alberta Advantage show, the sound was so good. It was crystal clear. And it wasn't a packed house. It was maybe about a third of the way full, which I know is the band would have liked to have seen it more full, but for me as a consumer, I was like, this is great. I could get so close, like, and I'm not surrounded by people. And hey, yeah, I remember like they for their last song of the night, they're only a three-piece band. But they managed to sound incredibly full with just the three members. And for that last song, they just jumped out right in the middle of the crowd. We all made a little circle around them. The singer had the acoustic guitar. I think the drummer just brought a tambourine down with them, and like the keyboard player, I don't even think she had anything. I think she was just singing like harmony vocals with him. And they just like quietly sang this little acoustic number to end the show, and we all just sort of surrounded them, and just everybody was quiet and just letting them sing. It was just a really really cool moment. Um, and then so this song was going back originally what I'd started talking about. This song was released as a single, and then later ended up on an EP, and then later ended up on the full length album. But at the time of that show, this was, I think, one of maybe three new songs that they had released up until that point in time. So yeah, just really really cool, awesome show, awesome moment. Love the band, love the new album, love the last album, love everything about this band.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, a lot of fond memories of the Beachland. And I love that vibe of like going out to a small audience like that and
Yeah.
finishing that. You mentioned the Trans-Siberian Orchestra and your cover thing. As it
Yeah.
turns out, I mentioned I have not been going to much music, but my wife has become like really into Christmas the last so many years. And so one of the ways and she expanded that this year was to get us tickets to see the Trans-Siberian
Oh,
Orchestra.
nice.
Have you been?
I have.
It was awesome.
I was good. I'm about to ask, like, how much did it blow your mind?
And she did prep me to be like, this is going to be, it's got the word orchestra in it, but from all I can tell, it's going to be like a rock show. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, great, but it was like such it was like a hair metal rock opera. And
Right?
like I couldn't decide at the beginning, like, because they would just like do the thing where they put the rock fist in the air, but a lot.
Yeah.
And it was just like exaggerated all the kind of like it felt like Spinal Tap or something.
Kinda,
And
yeah.
so I was trying to figure out like, is this cheesy or whatever? But I'm also just like I kind of love that. I
Yeah.
I more love the idea of hair metal than I'm like love the actual music. I just
Mhm.
like for whatever reason I find it just really joyful and awesome. And so I was just like I was into it. But I was trying to figure out like, are they kidding? Is it a little tongue in cheek? I was like, who cares? This is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
And
then I
and that's
found out
that's all it needs to be is just take it in and just appreciate
oh,
it. Yeah.
absolutely. And then I found out later when I asked my wife like what she felt, and she was like, I don't know why I would go see any other music ever. This is the best thing ever of all time. I was just like, so I can't recommend it enough. It's so
Yeah,
awesome.
it's so fun. Yeah, I've seen them several times now. From like not only like giant arena shows like that with all the crazy lasers and everything, but like even going back to when they first started out, they when they first ever did any tours, it was at small like theaters, like the
Mm,
State Theater, like the Key Theater, whatever you want to call it. So I even saw them there when they first toured, and much more scaled back show. It was the full band. Now I think they have like two touring productions that do like the
yeah.
East Coast and West Coast or something. But at that point, it was like the actual full band together. Um, no crazy stage lights or anything like that. It was basically like some lights and a fog machine, and that was about it. But it was even awesome back then. So those guys, like the main guys in that group, initially came from a power metal band called Sabotage that was around in like the 80s and 90s. Which I was a big fan of that band too. And then I remember like TSO sort of started off as like a little bit of side project. Like the song Christmas Eve Sarajevo was actually on a Sabotage album. And then they sort of took that one singular song and ran with an entire production around it and built this whole little side project, which then blew up way, 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 way bigger than the main project ever came close to. So like Sabotage is no longer around, and they're all devoting all of their time to the TSO project. But yeah, like that's like I've even seen Sabotage before too. Like back in the day, like that they were a fun band. Also, not fun is not the right word, but they were a good band.
Welcome, Cait Rybiski.
Hello, Cait.
Hi. How are you guys?
We are
Great.
glad
How
to
you
see
doing?
you.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers. I have a little cup that changes color full of wine. So there we go.
Excellent. All
Whoa.
right. Good to know
That's
that Dave and I aren't the only ones drinking.
my cue.
No, no, not at all, not at all. So yeah, this came from a great little bar here in Austin, Texas. So
Nice.
cheers.
Cheers.
Well, yeah, Cait and I had a previously scheduled call to talk about all things creative in our worlds, which we will get to once we stop the recording. But we're still talking about mix albums right now, and so uh, you had mentioned Cait being like interested to listen to this, which is a rarity in my world. So I know. I was like, well, we'll just get you in on it. There's a song we're coming up to that I owe fully to Cait saying like, check this out. But I don't know, just by way of like entrance into the conversation, do you do this kind of for yourself? Do you maintain playlists? Were mixed CDs a thing for you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, ever since like the CD burner, not even since then, it was, it was before then. It was recording on the radio, but also like making my own like mashups of songs too. From CDs and just knowing just how to hit pause, or record, play at the same time. Anyway, and yeah, I've always loved a good mix. Um, and I definitely maintain playlists. That's something I love to do. I love to curate music for a moment. And I've had some playlists that have lived with me for a long time, and some that have really inspired me too. So yeah, definitely a playlist mix album fan. Also have to, the original kind of mix album, the official one anyway, soundtracks.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Soundtracks were, always that's how I, at least me, I would go to spend such a substantial amount of my allowance or, whatever income I had on the record store. And so, yeah, I grew up in a great era of soundtracks. So, yeah, that's how I discovered so many amazing bands. So yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That and like the compilation albums that sometimes like labels would release or whatnot. I was just literally just half hour before jumping on this call watching a YouTube video talking about the big shiny tunes mix compilation albums that Much Music used to release back in the 90s and 2000s and whatnot. Yeah, I keep talking about a big theme of my input on this this podcast has been talking about Canada. So be forewarned.
Noted.
And for all the great music that Kevin has made, my favorite song still is probably Canadian Girl. That song is so irresistible. That doesn't make you sad to hear, but
no, not at all. I love
it's
hearing
like
that.
it's kind of a novelty song, sort of, but it's also just awesome. Let's see. So let's keep. So Cait, feel free to jump in on any of these. We kind of sprung this appearance on you. But if something rings a bell, yeah, please join in. I'm gonna combine these next couple of mine because they both come from the same place, and I don't have too much of a history with either the artists. But as I mentioned, unfortunately, this year saw a lot of loss from both my immediate family and then my wife's family. And these next couple of songs came from a kind of a grief playlist that she made. And it's Mumford and Sons Beloved and Phoebe Bridgers' I Know the End. And they both just kind of caught my attention as she would listen. And they also interestingly enough, they they both appeared in shows on Apple TV. So Beloved was featured prominently. I can't quite remember the scene on Ted Lasso, which I can't say enough good things about. And then I believe Phoebe Bridgers' song I Know the End is in a show called Shrinking, which is not as well known, but was
I watched both of those shows.
it's
Yeah,
really
I
wonderful.
love them both. I don't
Yeah.
remember the specific scenes that these songs were in, but yeah, I love both those shows.
I think this is right. I could maybe I'm getting this wrong, but so hopefully not. But there's a thing in Shrinking is a show where Jason Segel and he lost his wife and he's got a teenage daughter and he's trying to figure it out. He's also happens to be I'm not sure if it's a psychologist or whichever one.
Yeah,
probably the one that can't prescribe medication.
yeah.
Part of a small practice. And with Harrison Ford. Oh, and I'm blanking on the actress's name, who's magnificent. But I think this is the song where Harrison Ford sort of on the side is not it's not nefarious, but he knows the daughter, but the daughter doesn't want to like talk openly with her father, Jason Segel. So she does sort of meet and like on park benches and talk to the family friend Harrison Ford plays. And he kind of like gives her sort of psychiatric help, I guess, in this way. Or, but he advocates to her to just allow herself to sort of feel her feelings intensely, like maybe listen to a song that makes her sad, feel them, and then like when the song's over, just try to return to her day as a place to like a container for these intense feelings. And so I think that this song is used as like the song that she uses or the song that he uses or something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of this big epic song. Both of them are. And yeah, I don't know. I know them in these very specific kind of contexts like that. And they carry a lot of emotional weight. And so I don't listen to them lightly, but they have sort of provided like that context. And yeah, so I sort of, again, these are always these like audio, they're soundtracks. They're definitely the soundtrack, sort of my life soundtrack to the year. And so these songs kind of represent that particularly difficult period where a lot of people were dying on us. But yeah, so I don't have too much to say beyond that, other than just there are ways in which either of the songs I might like. I don't know. I don't want to disparage either of the artists, but I will say like the guitar riff in that Mumford and Sons Beloved is just everything. Like that is just so great.
Is really
And
good.
something about the way that Phoebe Bridgers just says like, but you had to go, and then oh man, it's too much. They're very Beloved is very like celebratory in a way. Whereas I know the end is really melancholy, but has that underlying resilience that I really appreciate about that sort of thing.
Yeah, I had notated for myself to ask you about the Mumford and Sons song in particular because I remember when that album came out, really liking that album quite a bit and liking the song. I'm pretty sure it was one of the singles off of that album, but I want to say that was I can't remember when this came out, but I want to say it was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago or something.
I
So
could see
I
that.
meant to ask you what I assume there was some sort of significance behind including it, but yeah, and yeah, Phoebe Bridgers, she's a name that I know, and I think I've heard a couple of songs here and there, but I've never really dove into her catalog. I love how this song has that big shift in vibe about halfway through, and then again right at the end. I love what she does musically in the song, so I'm gonna have to dive into some more of her catalog and listen to some more stuff as well.
Anything come up from either of these two songs, you know?
Yeah, I'm so Mumford and Sons, they just, they really do know how to write a great song, but and so always props to them with when it comes to that. But it's Phoebe Bridgers is so interesting to me because, um she is unique in that it seems like she's really against the algorithm, like she's an uncanny, I don't know why she's popular right now. Not saying anything on her talent, but it's so interesting that she has really risen in popularity with the things that she's done with Boy Genius, which have been amazing. And and I love it. It's really a celebration of kind of frailty in songwriting and vulnerability, and I think that that's so interesting. You know what I mean? And I love that that is getting some attention instead of, something that feels overly done or produced or anything like that. Like she really is. And so I love that she's coming around in popularity. And I first discovered her when she did maybe not first discovered her, but I think I saw her on, she did a pretty widely watched performance on SNL. But one of my favorite artists, SZA, came up with a new album last year, and Phoebe Bridgers had a verse on it, and it's a song that is just is already just so special to me. It's called Ghost in the Machine. And it's a beautiful song, definitely worth the listen. And yeah, it just seems so interesting. And I love, I'm all here for her brand of softness and vulnerability, and kind of that anti-catchiness. She really allows herself to breathe in a song, without having to, promise of some big delivery to make it good, you know.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out more of her music, for sure.
yeah, Sam.
She first sort of was on my radar because so track 13 for me is by a guy called Noah Gundersen, and they did a duet where they kind of like did a mashup, a live mashup in some sort of like it's not Day Trotter, but something like that, where it was like kind of a
It's
or
your track
audio
12 there, sir,
tree.
by the way.
Which one?
I said that's your track 12, by the way, sir.
Is it? Oh man, I mislabeled my something else. Well, that's troubling. I gotta change my website. But so they did a duet, and that was the first time I saw her, and I can't remember the two. It caught me because Noah Gundersen had a black eye, and I said, "Try so hard." I'm try. He's a guy. He's a singer songwriter dude who like he makes a lot of records, and he's got a lot of songs, and he's very talented and way too young for it, and that part's so annoying. But so much of his music, it's a little like Leonard Cohen for me, where like a lot of music don't there's no album like that's the fucking album, or like I love every track on said album. But like the few that jump out are like some of my favorite songs ever. And so the song that I included in this year's mix is called Swim, is perhaps the song I listen to most. There would be times where I just put that thing on repeat. And I love the resilience of the lyrics and the kind of energy of it. There are times when he reminds me like of a Jackson Brown. There's something about the timbre of his voice or whatever. But anyway, so I thought I'd throw that one out there. That might have been as I look at these songs, if I had to pick a favorite, which is really not something I like to do, that one Swim I really loved. But anyway, I have no idea number wise where we are for you, Kevin.
That one really jumped out to me a lot too. So I think I figured it out. So your track 10 on your website isn't actually on
Oh,
the Spotify link that you sent me.
yeah. So okay, I'll throw that one in there because that's really a quick thing. And I put it in there as a bit of a transition. So there's a kind of a block for me, of that kind of just acknowledging. If we're thinking about these things as an album, as we do, it's got that. It starts bit, high, and then there's kind of a second act,
Yeah.
where our characters are at their lowest, dealing with their difficulties, and so this sort of section that starts with the Mumford and Son song and all that, and then Phoebe Bridgers, and then it has the Death Wish Jason Isbell song we talked about before. In my sort of proper mix, ends that kind of period of the cave, as it were, ends with something called the Fragility Waltz, and it's a mashup of Nine Inch Nails instrumentals. So I was hip to a podcast series called Nailed, and it for people unfamiliar with Nine Inch Nails catalog from the very first release, like the single Down in It in like 1988, they would number or kind of mark each release, whether it's a single or a home video release or whatever it is, by a halo. So Halo 1 through, they're in the 30s now or something like that. So this podcast called Nailed goes through each Halo and talks about it in great detail. And it's a husband and wife team, Jessica and Blake. Jessica does a lot of the kind of the research, and Blake has an engineering background and puts together the sort of sonic side of the show, but he also sometimes puts together mashups. And I really liked this one, kind of from various songs from the Fragile album, that it's not available on the streaming, so I couldn't include it in that regard. But for me, it has I just like to be reminded of that band and that podcast, and it felt like a good way. And that album, The Fragile, has to do a lot with grief as well, and so that kind of rounds out that section for me and helps like solve this sequencing conundrum.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all making sense now.
Yeah.
I just listened to that. I like that you have links to everything on your site here, and I just gave like a low volume listen to that as you were talking too, and it's a cool little mashup.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I recommend that if you're into Nine Inch Nails. It's a great podcast.
Cool.
So where are you? With your? I think we left off. Are we up with Dan McCoy here?
Yeah. So I'll in the interest of expedience, I'll combine the next two together here because they're the only two on the mix album from indie artists that I'm friends with. And not that I like purposely put them back to back. It seems like I do that a lot of times on these mixes where I sort of group like the people I know together. And it's never intentional. But I just sort of feel like these like Dan's song following the Rural Alberta Advantage, which itself follows the Noel Gallagher song, like kind of going back to like the making an album and flow. Like, the first four songs are all very upbeat. Then Noel Gallagher sort of takes it back, nice, sort of like easy and ballady. And then like the Rural Alberta Advantage really kicks in very suddenly right after that Noel Gallagher song. And I feel like the next two, the Dan McCoy and the Megan Knight song, really flow together pretty well as well. So again, not an intentional thing to put people I know like grouped together, but anyway, so Dan's a really good friend of mine. I've known him for quite a few years. He's been playing music around like Northeast Ohio scene for decades now. And he just put out a new album this year, which I honestly I think it's the best produced thing he's ever done. I think it's the best writing that he's ever done on an album as well. So like I couldn't recommend this EP enough, in all honesty. And he put together a really cool show at the Jaga Theater earlier this year to commemorate the release of the EP, where he had me open for him at the show too, which was easily my favorite gig that I played all year. Because it's just like he sold the theater out too, which is amazing. Like,
wow.
And I had nothing to do with that. Like it was all him. I did not sell a single ticket. So it was cool. Like me and Dan's music, like it's again like kind of like us. Like there's enough of an overlap there to where like what I'm gonna play, people are gonna appreciate. And it was just a cool experience for me to get out there and play my half-hour set. And like normally I'm used to playing the bar gigs, the brewery gigs, or whatever, where I like to call it audio wallpaper. Where like I'm there, I'm playing music. Like sometimes people are clapping. Sometimes like I'll end a song and nothing happens. Like, yeah, it is what it is.
I'm literally having like, I know that.
Yep.
I don't like it. I watch
Yes.
those Jaga shows 7 nights a week.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yes. But it was cool being at that theater show and like everybody's quiet, they're respectful, like they're like I'll end a song, it's a huge like crowd response, everybody like it's it felt so good. And there's a recording that I've been working on for years and years and years, and I don't know when it'll be done, but hopefully at some point soon. But Dan actually guested on a couple of songs as well, playing lead guitar for a couple of tunes. So I played one of those at the show, and he came out and played lead on it. So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was cool. Like they played, I think they played about 2 hours, like just touching on everything that he's done in his career from various bands and everything. And like they had a whole stage set up without like a bunch of like really cool band photos going back throughout their entire lives, kind of touching on the EP is called Snapshots. So it's like leaning into that theme. And had like a PowerPoint projection in the background showing like the album covers from every song too. So like a lot of thought went into the show, and it was really cool night. And then segueing off that, Megan Knight is someone that I met when I was I used to go out to New Jersey every year for like 11 or 12 years straight or something. I forget how many years it was, but there was a singer-songwriter music conference out there that I would go to every March. I really look forward to it. It was always one of the most fun weekends. It'd be like 2 days of panels and workshops and that kind of stuff during the day. And then there'd be like anywhere from 10 to 15 bars and clubs around the little town that would have live music. So everybody'd be playing around town afterward. And I had played a show one year. I think I was like the first or second person up. And then she was on the same show, like one or two artists behind me. And it just like, I distinctly remember just having a couple of beers with buds, and like she started playing and I just did one of these like, huh? Just, it caught me. Like I was super impressed with the songs, with the performance. She's kind of like alternative country, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I'm not like, I don't really care much about like there's a few country artists I like, but they're very few and far between. But there's something about her music, like I really like it a lot. So I've kept up with her releases ever since. And this particular song, I don't know exactly what it is. Like it's just something about it. Like I think it's probably the best thing that I've heard from her. So yeah, just really cool stuff.
Yeah, I was struck by this one too, particularly on second listen. Both Dan McCoy's Remember and Megan Knight's Turbulence both stuck out at me, particularly about the writing. And yeah, I was into them.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us another? I gave a bunch.
All right. I'll just keep going down the list. The next one on mine is Finding Your Way Home by a band called the Front Bottoms. which yeah, right.
Yeah, with that name.
And that's exactly why I checked them out. Like, I didn't know anything about this
I've
band.
heard
It
of
was like,
them.
have you? Yeah, like I knew nothing about them until maybe 2 years ago or something. It was just like, that's an interesting name. All right, let's check this out. So yeah, not a ton to say about this song. It was on the album that came out earlier this year. I really liked the album a lot. This was the last track on the album, and it just and I think that particular song, just something about the melancholy sound of the music, and like the lyrics are pretty emotional as well. It just really drew me in, and I remember this was this album was released the same weekend as a road trip that I took up to Grand Rapids, just kind of like driving, hanging out in the city, drinking a bunch of beers and whatnot. Um, and one of the days I had driven out to Lake Michigan, one of the 4 lakes that I hit this year, Dave. And on my way back, I was listening to this album, and as soon as this song hit, I'm like, oh man, I got to repeat that. And I probably repeated that song like 10 times in a row or something as I'm driving back. This song and the album sort of sticks out in my mind as having a connection to that little trip though too. But yeah, just a really cool song.
Very cool. I'm gonna hit a couple in a row that sound similar but come from very different places. So let's see. One is called Cold Summer, by, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Matos. And it came from a film that I heard about only last year, but came out I think in May 2018, called Summer of '84. It's a horror mystery, and set in the summer of 1984. And so it's got
Yeah.
very much that kind of, Carpenter Tangerine Dream vibe of like synthesizer music from the films of that era. And it is actually like, so I like the soundtrack of that movie so much I put it on throughout the fall, just like when I would drive or do, I don't know, work where I could listen to music. And it just so happens to be one of those things where it's the score of the movie, but then there's lyrics like made into a song at the end. So it's literally the kind of music you're hearing throughout, but then there's a singer kind of singing lyrics that have to do with the story, which is kind of fun. But having had such a difficult year, something about that whole cold summer thing also resonated. And yeah, I was just happy to have a a place to be reminded of like all of the music from that movie. And it turned out to really set up quite well the following song called Shooting Stars, from a singer-songwriter called Alison Wilder, who I remember seeing when I first moved to Minnesota, to Northfield here where I'm talking to you today, and I've lived for the last like 11 years. I was trying to integrate myself in the local music scene, which was, so in here in Northfield there are 2 colleges. It's a small town. I'm from a small town, and this is a small town that's just so happens to have these kind of migrant populations that come through. So there's a college called St. Olaf, and then Carleton, and so tons of like young people, and it's pretty cool. And there seemed to be there were like articles being written about, is I can't remember what it was like. Is like, when I moved here the summer of, there's like, is Northfield the next music town USA? Things like that. And there was a lot going on here at the time, and I was trying to be a part of it. And so I remember seeing Alison Wilder around, and being really impressed by her. I never like got to know her or anything, but just, I probably my 2013 mix has a song from her. I remember like it's a song about kind of like being out in a bar singing but wanting to be home, which is literally something I was very familiar with at that time. Ultimately elected to prioritize not being in said bar. But so I remember including that song, and just really appreciating her kind of clear voice and lyric and storytelling. And I think she didn't make music for a while, and then she kind of got back into it, releasing like a song at a time through her Bandcamp and social media. And so I would just download one after another, and was really into all of them. And I think to some extent I probably included this one over a song called something about the 90s that I was also just like uh really into. But I was like, oh wow, this pairs so nicely with that other, and I like the sentiment. So here it is. So yeah, if you like the sound of it, I definitely recommend checking out Ms. Wilder.
Yeah, I really liked both those songs, and I liked how they like you said they paired well together because like, they're both kind of electronic in nature and sort of flow pretty well together. Yeah, they're both really good. I literally just had one word as my comment for the Lamatos song. Lamatos. I don't know how to pronounce that.
You say Lamatos, I say
Yeah.
Lamatos.
My only comment for that was just simply fire.
Oh, we are like full on millennial
Loved it.
zero.
Loved
Cait,
it.
Cait, I said bangers for the first time in this conversation, and I'm just leading into it. Old man Ullman is like saying all these things.
Yep.
You know,
Fire.
bangers is like it conveys its meaning.
That's a good way to put it.
Kevin and I are getting hipper by the moment. Thank you for inspiring us.
Really proud of you. Really proud of you.
Thank you. Hold my heated blanket. Oh Lord. Okay. Next song.
Perfect. Perfect timing for that.
It's cold in here, man.
We're in the middle of a deep freeze here in Austin, and I'm regretting that I didn't order a like a thermal blanket for my cats sooner.
Oh.
So yeah, you have for yourself, but meanwhile, I just ordered one for my cat, so I don't really know what that says about me.
It actually makes a lot of sense given that I have twice today gotten in trouble for taking this heated blanket from our dogs, as my wife sees it. She got me this for Christmas, knowing that I'm always cold because I'm old, but it's super cold to go outside right now as the animals, and so she'll wrap them in the blanket, and I'll get up late, and I'll be like, "Oh, give me that." She's like, "You son of a bitch." I think it's mine.
Yes.
So I think that's being a really good cat mama. I think.
Thank you.
I agree. I agree. I agree. I approve.
Well, Kevin, your next two are from some heavy hitters, the long-standing stalwarts.
Yeah.
In music, sort of. I don't know what history and canons, but is this so? Well, you hit me with the Peter Gabriel. Is this a new song of his?
It is. Yeah. So yeah, he put out a new album this year. And leading up to it, released a track off of the album. So kind of going back to the earlier discussion, how I talked about my old mandom and how I was annoyed with bands like releasing tracks like full year before the album comes out and then just using the album as a compilation of the tracks they've already released. Peter Gabriel essentially did that this year too, but there was a lot of thought behind it. So essentially what he did was on every full moon throughout the course of the calendar year, he released a new track from the upcoming album. And then like once they were all released, he would release the full album as the collection. But not only that, he also released two different mixes of each track, like one like a bright side mix and a dark side mix, one sounding brighter, one sounding darker, hence the names. But yeah, it was just like a really cool approach, like cool thought behind the approach on how to release a new album like that. I thought that was pretty cool. Panopticom was the first song released from the upcoming album, which is now out, but it was the first song released from the collection. And damn, like from the instant I heard this song for the first time, I was very much in love with it, and I love everything from the new album as well. But yeah, this song especially just really hit me musically, lyrically, everything about it, just really, really cool. And you know, talking about a guy that's in his 70s now, like and someone that I didn't expect to ever release new music again, to be putting out stuff this good and this relevant still at this point in his career, is to me amazing. so we talked a little bit earlier about U2 being a bucket list. Peter Gabriel was a bucket list performer for me as well. And this year he toured, and I ended up getting to see him. As soon as the tickets went on sale, I bought tickets to see him out in Chicago, because of course there wasn't a Cleveland date listed. Fast forward a week later, they announced the Cleveland date, and of course the tickets were like half the price. God damn it! But whatever. I was gonna make a weekend out of it. I got a buddy out in Chicago that I crashed with, and he went with me to the show. So like, yeah, fine, whatever. We'll go do this. But yeah, man, it was yeah. I'm struggling with the words. It was an awesome show. It's absolutely amazing. Like Peter Gabriel, one of the best live performers ever, in my opinion. And this was just such an awesome show. And the album's great too. Like I highly recommend listening to the album.
That sounds great. And then Depeche Mode.
Yeah. Back to back bucket list bands for me to see live. So Depeche Mode I saw in November. Yeah, been wanting to see them for years too, and finally got the chance to do that this year. And just like same thing with Peter Gabriel. Like these guys sounded so good live. Like it just me and my buddy kept like looking over at each other after every song, going like, "Holy shit, that sounds amazing." So yeah, I was just blown away by how good they sounded live. And I think like probably for the next solid month, I probably listened to nothing but them. Just went on this long kick of seeing them, listening to them. Which you know what I'm about to get into, right?
Yeah, well, this is the kind of thing I do anyway. Yeah. So and I love this bit in your liner notes too.
Yeah, yeah. So two things about this. One, like the reason I chose this song, they did have a new album this year, but I chose a song from 2005 to put on here, and it's because their music has been so influential over the years and it's been covered by so many people, and like there have been multiple occasions where I've heard a song from somebody else and gone, man, that's a cool song. And then later found out that it was a Depeche Mode song. Like, oh shit. And that happened twice at that concert, actually. Wow. Yeah. And this being one of the songs where like, I don't know, somehow I just missed this song when it came out. But there's another band that I love that released a cover version of it a couple of years ago. When they started playing this song at the show, I'm just like, I recognize that chord progression. I recognize that melody. I recognize those lyrics. What is this? And as soon as they hit the chorus, I'm like, oh shit, that was a cover. I never knew. Like me and my buddy both looked at each other at the same time because he had the same thought. Like, oh, that song. Yeah. Yeah, just cool. And so I later found this, and this shows the level of geekdom. I don't even remember if I put this in the liner notes or not. But oh no, I did put it. I see it there now. But I found a list on Wikipedia that was just like all bands that were covering Depeche Mode songs, and like the cover version that I knew of this song was not included on this list. I'm like, oh, how about that? I'm gonna edit Wikipedia and add it in.
Yes.
So I did.
Yes. That made me. I love that.
Because like, God damn it, list, you're not complete. But yeah, no. Speaking of like the novellas and my rants on stuff, there's a big rant in the liner notes here about Spotify data, but because like Spotify always does their Wrapped at the end of the year, and I know for a fact that like I listened to Depeche Mode more than any other band last year, and I was just waiting for it to show up on the Wrapped, and it didn't. I'm like, what the fuck? Why isn't this showing up? And it's because Spotify only looks at data from January to October, and like everything after that just doesn't count. And so it was after that show that I was listening to a ton of them. So it just doesn't count. And like not right, yeah. And like not that it matters at all to Depeche Mode, right? They couldn't give a shit whether or not they showed up as my number one band. But I don't know, it aggravates me. Like it's like, it's my data and it's not complete. Like, what the fuck?
I appreciate this.
I don't know why this bothers me so much, but it really does.
No, that bothers me so much. Right? I didn't know the January through October thing because I've always thought about it. I'm like, well, if they're releasing it in December, then then that doesn't count. Like, I listened to so much good stuff in December, like, which is part of it, but now it's not even November either.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
terrible.
exactly. It's just like all of that time spent listening just going to waste.
I have excellent taste in music. It should all be reflected
Thank you.
A full year's listen, you know?
Right. I'm glad that you appreciate my anger in this.
I appreciate it more in theory.
It shouldn't make me this angry, but it does.
This aggression will not stand.
Right.
Kevin, we all know who's at fault here. What the fuck are you talking about? What shocked me is that so I didn't know Depeche Mode. I mean, I knew of Depeche Mode, but I didn't know their music very well prior to meeting my wife, who is a big fan. I was shocked that this song is from 2005.
Right?
I thought for sure, because it was all new to me through her, that this was like from the 80s. It sounds to me like in the best way. But this is one of her favorites, and so I was psyched to hear it, and I love the rant. And I'm glad that while I can appreciate your beef in theory, I could tell that like Cait has also felt it. And I'm glad to see that commiseration happen.
I appreciate the commiseration as well.
I hate that I have to rely on Spotify for my the reflection in my music taste. I hate that it's the gold standard, but it is.
Yep.
And knowing that just chaps my ass a little bit more, so thank you very much.
Right. And so not only do we rely on them, but then they get it wrong at the end of the year. It's just like, damn it. If you're going to be the number one most popular listening avenue for us to listen to music, and you're going to give us this cool wrapped thing at the end of the year, like compiling all of our listening habits into like a nice little presentation, which I do look forward to seeing that every year, at least include everything. Like don't completely omit 2 months out of it. That's like I'm failing to do the math, but that's a significant percentage.
And I think that their data is very wrong too. I will just say that and leave it there. I have often like expected certain things to be like, in right up there, and then they're nowhere to be found, and then other random shit is up there, and I'm like, what? Like, yeah.
Yeah. I've felt that a couple of times too, where like I'll look at the playlist that it compiles at the end, like your top 100 songs or something, and you'll see something that's like number 20 or whatever, and I'll go, well, yeah, I listened to that a couple of times, but like to be my 20th most, I don't know about that. Yeah, I feel you there.
Rant over.
For now.
Moving on for now.
For now.
Maybe they'll have corrected it by next year. Maybe Adele will get mad at him or something.
We need Taylor Swift on this.
Yeah, right. I think
change, man.
He's the only one that could possibly fix it. I think. I don't think my tweets are gonna matter.
No.
Oh, all right. So I'm gonna group another couple together only because we've kind of talked about them in other areas. So another song from Zach's album, Any Way You Can. Just double checking that's correct. Any Way You Can, yeah. Called Amaze, which I also really like. Again, like really strong guitar work and melody. And this one too, I sort of feel like I have contributed to the pigeonholing Zach as a sort of Pollyannish person. I don't know who's listening to me other than we have some shared supporters, but hopefully I can maybe undo some of that. But this one is pretty it's a kind of he lists off a lot of things that are kind of difficult in a lot of sort of more difficult emotions, and then in the chorus it's that great thing. I think I don't know if Springsteen got it from somewhere, I'm sure, but this idea of the blues in the verse and the gospel in the chorus. So you sort of move through difficult things in the verses, and then you kind of have a release in the chorus. And his release in the chorus is break out of old ways, recognize, let's be amazed. But some of the things that he lists, he's well, this one jumped out at me big time. He's like, I dug my mother's grave, filled it in with all I couldn't save. And I like he did lose his mom, and I don't doubt for a second that he literally dug her grave. I don't know that for a fact, but I wouldn't put it past them, you know? And I was just like, fuck, whoa. Because it's a great song anyway. But like that line, I'm just like, Jesus. And then there's a goddamn trumpet solo that rules. Yeah, give that one a listen. But we talked more about him earlier. Zachmusic.net. And then I have another solo Glen Hansard song. So we had the Swell season song, but he put out a solo album called All That Is East Is West of Me Now, and the lead-off track is called The Feast of St. John. Which I really like. It's to me, it's sort of he's like singing this thing about what's the lyric here? I'll hit it. Oh, like birds of bad weather, here they come. Oh, may they all fall together. Oh, monsters be gone. Which I can't help but equate with a certain malignant, anti-democratic thing that's kind of worldwide right now. That's how I'm reading it anyway. But it's kind of a nice, like, positive spin on it, but that's got some of that like edge about him that I appreciate. So I'll throw those two together for now. What is the stuff for you, sir?
I definitely liked both of those songs a lot. I didn't listen closely enough to the Zach song to notice that lyric. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that. But yeah, I thought like that song was like very kind of like funky, dancey, sort of like it's really cool.
He's
really
great
cool
at that actually. Yeah. For like a white kid from Northeast Ohio, he's very funny.
Yeah. I see a cat in the background on Cait's image there. Nice.
Yeah,
want that blanket.
He is always eager to be part of the conversation. That is why I am on mute until I have something to say. He has a lot of opinions about what's been said, so
I'm willing to let him
Spotify
some stuff. What are his thoughts on that?
There's a lot to say about Spotify.
So I'll group the next two of mine together too. So kind of like starting with that Depeche, actually sort of like leading from that Peter Gabriel song into Depeche Mode. We kind of hit the electronic part of my album too. And then that continues with Metric and We Are Scientists. So both songs, like Metric was a part of that show that I talked about, going up to Detroit, seeing them with Noel Gallagher and Garbage, and just like awesome show all around. All three bands were just absolutely incredible. Metric, and again, sort of circling back to earlier conversations with you too, like Metric released an album last year called Formentera, I think was what it was called. And not their best album, but like really good, a lot of good stuff on it. Then this year they released Formentera 2, which I don't know, like not great. It was good. I liked it. It was good stuff, but like it just sort of felt like it was leftover tracks from the first album that just didn't make the cut. So this song was from the first album, and just a song that I really loved off of that record. And they played this one at the show that I went to, whereas at the time Formentera 2 was not out yet, and they didn't play anything off of that at the show. So I wanted to include this one. And then the We Are Scientists, they're a band that I liked when they first came out. And I haven't really followed them that much since. And I just kind of stumbled upon a new release. I'm like, hey, I'll check that out. This was probably like the first album of 2023 that I really latched onto. I'm getting all these pop-ups now from Norton. There's more pop-ups from Norton than the actual things that they try to block, I swear. Norton is the virus at this point, I swear. All right, well, we're getting demonetized on this YouTube. Sorry about that, Dave.
It's worth it.
That like We Are Scientists. It was probably the first album that I really latched onto in 2023. It's like their album Lobes. I loved, kind of like that Beaches album. Every track is a banger. Throwing it back to that again.
Doing it, yeah.
Just every song super
Fire.
upbeat, super fun to listen to. Fire, yeah. And at least according to the Spotify data, whether or not it's right, I have no idea. But this song was supposedly the song that I listened to the most last year, so I definitely wanted to include that as well. And then I'll go with one more too. Like the next song is The Subways. So sort of like all these 4 or 5 songs I thought flowed together really well, because they all sort of have a similar vibe to them. And like this was a band that I didn't see live or anything like that. I don't really know a ton of. I remember like their one big radio single back in 2005, but like I have not kept up with this band ever since. But I gave their new album a listen to this year, and it's a good album. I liked it a lot, and this particular song just really jumped out at me. I like the play on the old video Killed the Radio Star and turning it around to Influencer Killed the Rock Star, which is just kind of cool. Lyrically, I thought it was just a fun song. So I listened to this song quite a bit this year, so I wanted to include this one also.
I was into all 3 of these. I starred as the Ullman, like download these, the metric, the We Are Scientists, and the Subways. So this is this one I actually did look up myself about misheard lyrics.
Oh.
I misheard the downward spiral influence the crow. I don't remember what the actual words were, but that's what I heard. I was like, is that what they just said? Because that's awesome. But anyway, I really liked it. It did not say that, and it didn't. The timeline's off, but whatever. Let's see. So let's see. I'll talk about 2. One, yeah, I sort of feel bad, like order wise. I end up talking about people less, which is not to say anything about the quality of the music or anything. So track 15 for me is the Gaslight anthem, a song called Autumn. And I remember, so you remember Musica, the concert club Musica?
Yeah.
This is random memory, but so I used to do annual concerts there with like the family band would be a part of it, and my brother as an act and all this, and a lot of great memories there. And they had a lot of times the sound would be good because this particular engineer, Jim Bethel, would run it and do a great job. And on that forthcoming Bushman release, I have a recording like of my dad's high school band while they're all still alive, from ultimately like 50 some years after, from 2013 that he recorded. So hats off to Jim. But one time prior to one of these concerts, they play just house music. And I heard something that kind of sounded like Springsteen I was getting into at the time. And I said, "Who is this?" And he's like, I think the National." So I like looked up the National, and I was hearing their music, and I was like, I don't think this is it. but obviously I didn't know who it was.
Yeah.
And later I figured out, it's like, oh, that was definitely Gaslight Anthem. And on this most recent album of theirs, called History Books, there is even a Springsteen duet. And I don't know a lot of their catalog really well, but their song Handwritten is one of my all-time favorites, and was on one of my mix albums when I first heard that. And I was just checking in with them. I'm like, what are these awesome dudes doing now? And so I listened to the album, and this song Autumn jumped out at me. I still remember, driving to the Twin Cities, and just hearing Black Jeans in Autumn. And I was like, look down and like, oh, I'm wearing black jeans. I identify with this song. So there we go. I could group more, but they're not related, so I'll just sort of pass the baton back.
I picked up on that album this year too. That was a good album. I think Get Hurt from one of their previous albums was on one of my
I missed
mixes,
that.
like
I need
whatever
to.
that year
I
was.
made note that I should, because I realized like, oh, I never heard that one. I should check it out. But yeah, I love their vibe and aesthetic.
Yeah. I think you skipped over that Rose Betts song, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So Rose Betts, Lions. My wife has been on a real kick. If you could, she's just like trying to find new music, stuff that she can, for all the reasons people want that kind of thing. And so she uses Amazon a lot for that. So like she'll have somebody, Amazon play a song that she likes, and then stuff follows that's supposedly related. So yeah, she came across this artist. I can't remember where she's from. I don't know too much about her, Rose Betts. But whoa, what a song. And she would like play this song to like kind of get ready for the day. And I'm looking at it, and it's just like the best song to start your day to, because it's like, again, blues in the verse, gospel in the chorus. And so it's got this kind of starts off with like these very short, like 3-line verses. How can a child endure such pain? What is this cold that runs through her veins? She bears a light that never wins. And then there's a pre-chorus. Just like you, it shines to the spark of flame. Just like us, we stand up, we face the day. And then the chorus, we're going to kill the fear and fill the silence because we are the lions. Oh, it's so fucking great. It's so
Right.
great. I love it so much. And I mentioned before, I'm just a right prick about singers. Like, I don't know why I'm British all of a sudden. That makes it all the worse.
I was going to say
I
that
think I gotta
sounded
end
very
this
Brit of
call.
you.
I'm a right prick about singing.
Rod Prick.
Sucking Christmas ale was a mistake. But
Wanka.
I'm really like shitty and judgy about it. And I think I know that comes from, like I mentioned earlier, like I could imitate singers growing up, so I did. And so I'm just really judgy about people with affects to their vocals. But like if you're an actual like someone singing in your own accent, then okay. But there's so many people that just like adopt that stuff, and it makes
Yeah, you're right.
But I don't know where she's from, but she's not like putting this on. But nonetheless, like I hear the sort of uh a certain thing to a vocal, and I'm like, and I get like resistant, but like, and even like listen to back, I'm like, but you get to that chorus, it's like I can't deny. I mean, how great! I I can't say enough good things about this song, and it was so funny, like. So this is a fun thing too, when you live with somebody and that they're checking out the music that you recommend. So she puts on the list. She's like in the shower, and she's like, Alexa, this, Alexa, next, Alexa, next. I'm like, oh man. She's like passing through all these things, and then the things she likes. I'm like, okay, well, that's nice. She didn't skip that one. She was so delighted that I chose this, like so vindicated somehow that my like snobby ass accepted so much of what she was kind of piping through the house. So that's just an extra bonus for me. But yeah, man, Rose Betts, Lions, do it up. It's fire. It's a banger.
It is. It's lit.
All that.
It is though. It is like such a uplifting anthemic song though. Like you're right. It's just an undeniable chorus. Great song. Yeah.
Do you know this one, Cait?
I actually took a listen to it. I agree with all that's been said. Yeah. It's great fucking chorus. And and no, I mean, it's very uplifting, and I think you need those songs that strike the right chord with you, that that feel genuine in that way, to kind of get you going in the morning, or whenever it happens to be. But yeah, great voice, great lyrics, great chorus. Love it.
Nice. We should steam ahead. I let's see. One of them I want to talk about with Cait. But let's get you caught up a bit, Kevin, in the meantime.
All right, yeah, I'll just breeze through a couple here. So my track 15 is Starbenders. It's a song called The Game. Incidentally, Starbenders is that band that covered the song Precious by Depeche Mode.
Nice.
And I knew their version before realizing it was a cover. But just really, really cool, like throwback glam rock band. They opened, or they were supposed to open for a band called The Sounds a couple of years, 2 years ago or something, coming at a show coming through the Grog Shop, and The Sounds tour bus broke down in PA, so they never got to play. But Starbenders played their set anyway and just did it as a free show, so we stuck around and listened to them, and like I've been a big fan ever since. Vola, a band that so now like going through like phases of the album, right? So we're coming out of the electronic and upbeat indie rock phase, and now we're going into like the heavier like metal and that kind of stuff. So like, you know, the next couple of songs are all sort of that kind of phase. I try to ease into it a little bit. But like Vola is like a prog metal band, but very, very melodic. They do a lot with vocal harmonies and things like that too. Just like really good melodic choruses. Went to Pittsburgh this year to go see back-to-back shows at the same venue. Just incidentally, two of my favorite metal bands happen to be playing at the same venue on back-to-back nights, and these guys played the second night. So just really cool show. Just awesome night altogether. And Baby Metal was track 17, which is a Japanese metal band that was like put together by a producer, and like it's trying to fuse like J-pop with heavy metal or something, like just like a weird conglomeration of stuff. And I remember probably like a decade ago, one of my buddies like, here, check this out. Just, I'm not going to tell you anything about it, but listen to it. And like, it's so kind of like what you were saying with TSO earlier. I couldn't tell if it was if it was a joke or if like
Yeah.
this was like a legitimate thing, but I loved it. I loved everything about it, and I still love it. And now with this newest album, like it's maybe it may have been a joke initially. I don't really honestly know, but like now it's this serious juggernaut of a band, and like the most recent album was a concept album. Like there's like a lot of depth to what they're trying to write now, and like they actually played in Cleveland this year, and I didn't go, and I didn't know about it until after it was already done. So like I wish I would have gone to it. That's the one concert regret I do have for this year, is I wish I would have gone to see this. But I would imagine this would be amazing to see live. But yeah, the whole album was really cool musically. And then I'll hit my track 18 here really quick. Was Mammoth WVH, Take a Bow, which is Wolfgang Van Halen. It's Eddie Van Halen's kid. On the recordings, he writes, produces, and plays every instrument on the recordings, which is just incredible. It's so stupid that anyone is that talented with that many different instruments. But yeah, this was probably my favorite album all year. I loved every song on it. It's just so well written and well produced and well played. And I traveled down to Columbus to go see them play at a show down there, and man, it sounded awesome. They played great. During their last song, Wolfgang's introducing the song and just kind of like talking, like thanking the crowd and everything. And he just like looks out and he sees a kid holding up a sign. He's like, "Wait, what does that say?" And like he reads it, and it says, "Let me rock with you." And he's like, "Wait, do you know this song?" And the kid's like, "Yeah." "Well, shit, come on up here." He pulls the kid up on stage, takes off his guitar, hands it to the kid. The kid plays it flawlessly, all the leads, the solos, and everything. And like, and you could tell this was not like, I know like Green Day does stuff like this, and there's other bands that do stuff like this, and you expect it out of each show. I don't think this was pre-rehearsed or predetermined or something. Like this was not a thing that they were going to do, that they were planning to do. Because you could see like Wolfgang, he's like watching the kid the whole time, like laughing about it, and like he's as entertained about it as we are at this point, to the point where like he's screwing up the lyrics because he's too busy like laughing at the whole situation. And like so he's just having fun up there, and like just such a cool moment. Just really, really awesome show altogether. But yeah, that's the album's awesome too. I can't recommend this album enough.
I love that anecdote, and you tell it so wonderfully in your liner notes. And I love that guitar solo in the Mammoth song like is insane, and that last note that he sings is so fucking great.
Right?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, like this song just that guitar solo, just the way it builds and just crescendos, yeah.
I was into the baby metal too. Like that was like, well, I was like, what's this now? This is great.
Right? It's cool. It's cool stuff.
It's the kind of thing you turn on to that I would never otherwise hear. Let's see. Oh, so track 18 for me is the one that I think I would love Cait to talk more about than me, because I heard it from her and I was like, this is great. Is Maren Morris's Get the Hell Out of Here. How did you come across this, ma'am?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it was a new release, and I am trying to think about how I stumbled upon it, but I think I initially heard this song called The Tree that she put out, which is on this same 2-song EP that she calls The Bridge, with Get the Hell Out of Here and this song on it, accompanied by 2 really interesting music videos, really artfully done, and they're kind of, companions. But it's made a lot of waves, if you're at all kind of tuned into country music, because I can't remember exactly how it came about, but she kind of announced that she was just essentially, not that she was leaving country music, but that she was just done participating in the machine of country music, and who was allowed to participate in that. And these were 2 songs that really, lyrically you can feel a lot of that, and certainly see a lot of it in the music videos that accompany these 2 songs. But they're also universal too. Like, I think that's, I'm curious to know what kind of caught your attention about this one. She has unmatched vocal delivery. I mean, my God, she can really sing, and she's a really talented songwriter. She's had a lot of, I think her first hit was My Church. She's written songs for Tim McGraw. She's she had a kind of a crossover hit with Zed, in the middle, that I'm sure it's one of those earworms, like it if you hear it. So she's been very successful, and I really applaud and kind of admire her acknowledgement of the privilege that she gets in the country music scene, and her willingness to kind of just step away and say, you know what, like, I love country music, but I don't love how it's propped up in these days and times, and how exclusionary it is. So she's been doing a series of shows around the country, and she's often, this is not a new thing for her, but she often promotes and elevates other performers who look and sound very different than her, and works with a lot of queer artists, and drag queens like Shea Coulee and Miss Peppermint and many others. And so a lot of like RuPaul's Drag Race fans will know that she was a judge on a recent season, and so she's often been someone who's really vocal about her progressive beliefs, which is not popular in country music. So a lot of people in country choose to kind of say, well, fine, good for you. And Taylor Swift did similarly kind of did a similar thing. I don't think for those necessarily those motivations, or maybe I'm really not, I'm not up on my, like, I'm not a total Swiftie. Like, my favorite cousin is a Swiftie, and so I kind of understand by proxy what is happening through her. But
I have a dear friend who's as well, and I'm always just like, all right,
Yeah.
okay.
But I remember, I kind of vaguely remember when, when Taylor Swift kind of, just kind of stepped aside from exclusively, country music and venturing into pop. And I think, some people were turned off by that. But I think a lot of people in the country music machine, so to speak, just kind of seeing some of their reactions there, and, they don't want anything to do with her. And so, but I think it's really cool of Maren Morris to kind of, celebrate, that she, her kind of her bridge into, new possibilities that aren't hindered by, the very curated country music machine that is in Nashville, and parts of Texas too. So
Yeah, I was you had mentioned this EP or like pair of songs to listen to, and you value a lot of the same things about music as I do, and what it can and do and be in your life. And so I checked it out because you said, and I was just like, oh, this is great. And I just man, I mentioned at the very start of this like conversation how I probably put a bit too much pressure on music to be too much, but and it can't all you can't everything can't mean everything all the time. But sometimes when it seems to, it's really compelling. And these songs felt like that to me. And boy, I didn't expect to I hadn't even thought about this relationship. But I was telling Kevin earlier, like I've been to very few concerts like in the last so many years. And this year we went to Trans-Siberian Orchestra, which is awesome. And then the other show that we saw was the Chicks at the Minnesota State Fair. And I remember just being the age that I am, like wide open spaces being around and like that being, I never was like, who cares about the Dixie Chicks at the time. But when they had that thing happen in like the early 2000s that resulted in the I don't know if it's called Shut Up and Sing, I'm Not Ready to Make Nice, the song. But then
yeah.
there was like a documentary that followed about all of that. And from that moment forward, I can't if I just think about the bravery that Natalie Maines especially show, like getting death threats, all this stuff, and they were just like standing up for what they felt was right and like this is not okay. And I just found the whole thing so like moving, and I still did. And so to this day, I can't even like something about Natalie Maines for in particular. I just can't. Just destroys me. I just like quietly sobbed through the whole concert. My wife was trying to enjoy herself, but I loved it. And I sobbed is not the right word. I just quietly cried.
David is sad while everyone around him is trying to be happy. That's a theme.
Yeah, but it's like it's not truly like it's hard to explain, and I have to be in the mood for it, I guess, or up for it. Because my wife will make these like playlists, and she would do this like around that Chick's album, Gaslighter, that came out, and she would just like play it around the house, and then other Chick songs, and I'm just like walk around and be like, you can't do this. I'm very sensitive to all of it, so I can't. I don't know. I can't deal with it. But so something it's like a similar type of a bravery, I guess. I mean, and it could be argued that it's more meeting basic expectations as a human being, but most people don't do that. And the fact that this I was gonna call a young woman, she's 33. I looked it up, but she's short, so maybe that's where.
Well, she's young to our perspectives.
Yeah.
It's fine.
She's 5'1", so
we're getting older.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a combination of that kind of thing, and I remember hearing I wish I could remember the journalist, but I can't. But he was talking about something he called belief music, and he was I think equating it at the time to like the Avett Brothers, and he was using sort of Springsteen as a point of reference. And I think for me too, like Bruce Springsteen has a lot of music that made him very successful. Your Rosalitas and kind of like fun party songs. But for me, like where I sort of looked to him, and as a guy in my 30s was like, oh, well, he's a passionate singer. I aspire to be a passionate singer. I've never really checked this out. I'm looking for new music. Listen to his catalog. I was like, oh wow, okay. Get to Darkness on the Edge of Town. I'm like, holy shit, this is everything, you know. So it's this kind of ethos and intention behind the music. And I mention all that to say is that to me, Maren Morris feels in line with that kind of the roots to the what she's singing about and what she has at stake are so like big and noble, and what I look to for music. Like we were talking about that opening track of the Foo Fighters, we're all looking to be rescued tonight. Like that's what I'm here for. And man, is she delivering. And so I'm so grateful to you, Cait, for calling her to my attention, and just glad to know that this kind of thing is out there and happening, and that guy, old man like me, can get on board.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm glad to dive a little bit deeper into her material now, kind of after getting her, having been kind of captivated by her as well. But she definitely brings a similar energy to Natalie Maines and to the Chicks. And I think they've toured together too this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I think unfortunately she just wasn't opening on the date that she went to. I know, but
wow. That would have been
yeah,
too much.
yeah. But she really is, I think, Maren Morris is insanely talented because she's an old school, like, she was really raised in the industry, but in that kind of Texas music and in that thing, and she has such a pair of pipes. Oh my God, like just her voice and her lyrics are just insanely powerful. So I'm really excited to see what comes from her too in 2024 and beyond.
Yeah. Kevin, bring us home. Or I don't know if you had anything to say about Ms. Morris there, but
all I'll say is that I really liked that song a lot too. And in all honesty, like until this discussion, I did not even pick up that she was a country artist from that one song. So like, and that's kind of going back to what we were talking about and what I mentioned with Megan Knight on my mix, that like I'm not into country at all, but like artists like this that I guess let me rephrase that. I'm not into like modern bro country at all, but artists
yeah.
like Maren and like Megan and some other artists I picked up on that are like doing something that just a little bit more has more depth to it, I guess, for lack of a better term. That's stuff that I can really get into, that I really like. I'll have to listen to some more of her stuff. I liked the song a lot.
Yeah. One last thing, and I will stop on this, but just to bring home what you said, we're talking about, the bro country thing. I think this is a little bit of her response to, there was a song that I think blew up this year, Try That in a Small Town, which, and her response to it was so, smart. And she's like, it's, people are not, that's not for joy. Like those listens and repeat, listens, like it didn't climb the charts because people loved the song because it was joyful. It was, out of hate and spite. And like, and what is that about? Like,
yeah.
Why do we have any place for that in artistic spaces, So yeah, if you check out the accompanying music videos, you'll see some references to, I think, that song that's, a little bit of a response, on her part. So very interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, I will definitely look into that because that was that Jason Aldean, that other song?
Yeah, I think so. So.
That song sucked. And to be fair,
it did.
I was hating on Jason Aldean before it was popular.
Yeah, not my favorite either. So yeah, but yeah, see, but you were originally stood.
Yeah, before it was cool to hate that guy, I was hating
before
that guy.
It was cool to know he was uncool.
Yeah. I'll just jump into my last track here really quick. So the last track that I have on here is Biffy Clyro. which we talked about me being a data nerd. So like I've got the spreadsheet that keeps track of every band and every song that I've used in these these mix albums. And so Biffy Clyro is tied for the most appearances now with 7. Um, and this is a song from a live album. The actual song itself was released back in 2009. But the reason that I put it on here, they're one of my favorite bands. I think they're one of the most talented, like currently relevant bands out there right now. And last year I traveled to go see them twice on the same tour on back-to-back weekends because they don't really tour in the States too often. So I'm like, I have to take advantage of this while I can. So it was awesome. But anyway, this is probably their most well-known and most popular song. And I put it on here because my second date with my now girlfriend, we went to Oktoberfest, and as we're driving back, I just threw it on a playlist of like live music, and this song happened to be playing during our first kiss. So cue the Oz if you want.
That's so nice.
Yeah.
Got me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so now it's like it's a song in a band that has always been meaningful to me, but now there's a little bit more as well. And musically, I just felt like from that moment on, like in the back of my head, I'm like, all right, that song's going on the mix album, and it's going to be the last song because it's so perfect. It's a perfect way to conclude any album, let alone this one. So yeah, that's where that one comes from.
That's great. Yeah, that struck me again on the repeated listen. I was even more into it. Yeah, another like terrific. Yeah, you make the best mixes, man. Mix albums. I really do think that that's a distinction, and that's a term that you coined, at least in my world. And these things always hang together to me like an album in a way that no one else's like mixes that they've shared with me do. And so I really appreciate the craft of that because I can see it at work, and I'm always just like, that's part of what I admire so much about it too, and enjoy like the transitions and yeah. Oh, it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so last one for me is the namesake of this year's mix for me called Trail Mix. It's the name of the song. Gets a little confused. A lot of mixes in there. But by HAMELL on Trial. And HAMELL's been on a bunch of the mix albums for me since I first saw him. A dude I knew in the Cleveland area opened for him at the Beachland, like I think it was the Tavern, and I was just not aware of him. He was on Ani DeFranco's record label at the time, and that was notable for me. But I was just so blown away. I mean, the guy is one of a kind. Like I was looking up on Wikipedia trying to find how old he is, and it doesn't say. But I think he got his first like Mercury record deal like around 40 in the 90s, and so he's probably his mid 60s at least. But he plays that acoustic guitar like a machine gun, and it's like, and he's got the fastest wit and yeah, I love him. And I had the chance to play with him a few times, and it was great. And so, but this song like really well encapsulates so much of what these mixes and music is about for me. And so he says that in the chorus, he's like, how do you find your trail mix? How do you find your hope in a world gone crazy loco? How are you going to cope? How do you find your trail mix? Make you laugh and jump. Got to get out in the bed in the morning, get you over the humps. And that's like, I don't know. It's just perfect. That's as at this stage of my life where I have the music that I love, but I'm seeking out new songs. A lot of times it is for these explicit purposes. And like I said, it's a lot to hang on a song. And at 18 of them here, 19 of them, they were up to the task in my estimation, or for my very particular tastes. But yeah, this was probably the last like full album I heard. It's called Bring the Kids, and a lot of fun stuff on it. But that chorus alone, but then he get this like the Phoebe Bridgers song or some of the others that like kind of turns towards the end and like goes into this other thing. And I mentioned before a lot of times wanting it to be things I would sing myself. And so I think maybe probably first have it on the Spotify, and there's a whole section here. I don't even know what he goes on about depraved sex in a Motel 6, and I was like, I cut that for a time in my edit. But towards the end, man, he says, and at this point, he's just kind of going on. He's almost like a beat poet, kind of like that vibe. I mean, he's going like, my music goes into hospices, migrant camps, leper colonies, prison cells. It's Ai Weiwei, Santa Claus, Tesla, Joan of Arc, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It puts a crown on the head of Rosa Parks. It ushers immigrants safely across borders, puts out fires in the Amazon, floods ignorance. It gives teen multivitamins to Greta Thunberg. This is my trail mix, and I'll live forever. Are you kidding me? Yeah, man. I don't know what else to say. That's like, oh, and that just like that came out this year. I don't know why that like floors me, as though like all good music is in the past.
Technically, it is in the past from our perspective right now.
That's right, yes. Yeah. I don't know, man. That's just everything I want.
Nice. So this is mix album number 20 for you, the 20th anniversary.
Yeah.
So like, what are your overall thoughts on how this stacks up to all your like the previous mixes, or like how do you think your approach has changed or over the years, or like what influences this really had on you? Like, give us some overarching thoughts on all of this.
Wow.
20 years, man. That's 2 decades. It's a long time to be doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I hadn't considered that too much. I think it's still the same in terms of like the criteria. Well, as I'm looking at the track listing, and there's still that thing of like wanting to have a place for things that I might not otherwise listen to. That's a component, as well as the things that like felt like it is this sort of audio diary of my year, or the kind of songs I wish I'd written. But I think the thing to have changed the most is just, I'm trying to find it. I can't find the greatest example. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's widened more to intentionally try to step outside of so specifically my own experience to allow for other voices that um sing things that I couldn't or have no business or no knowledge of. I mean, I guess come the closest to that is maybe like the Maren Morris thing, where it's like I or the Phoebe Bridgers song. Like, there's so many of those words that would never. I'm not going to sing along to some rap country song, but uh, but I do want to hear her sing about it, and I think that's the way that my world has widened a little bit, kind of decenter myself slightly. I try to do that in larger, more productive ways in my life at this age, but I do find so much with music that I'm looking to see and hear my own experience reflected, and to kind of give voice to things that I would want to. That's still very present for me. But yeah, I don't know. I really value this, and it does feel like, I can go back and listen to those other mixes and so clearly remember like where I was and where I was coming from. And it's interesting how much of that is the same and encouraging, especially through the words of others, like because like so much, like it'll be aspirational, like sing. I do that in my own songs too, when I still write them, or it's like, this is like how I would want to be or what I would want to say, and so it's really nice to be able to yeah, kind of have these people. That's the music I like most, is that kind of thing that someone is singing about something that I have felt but haven't had the sort of word or skill or even inclination to like try to realize.
Yeah. Do you go back and re-listen to the old mixes now?
Not every year, like you mentioned, because it takes me a minute. But
there's a lot of them, yeah.
yeah, but sometimes, yeah, and all of those songs, like, they mean so much to me, and it's interesting more and more that it used to be that they were like little breadcrumb trails to the albums, but I think over time it's become more and more like the songs themselves like are the thing, you know, and the compilation, and then the things it facilitates, like this conversation and our friendship around this,
Yeah.
are a big part of it too for me. Thanks for asking. Yeah. How
Yeah.
so? How are you feeling now about after 14 years?
I mean, yeah, like it's it really like we kind of touched on it a little bit. I think like it really has evolved for me, especially over the last couple of years, to being this thing that an avenue for me to try to turn people on to music and try to be like maybe like a tastemaker type thing, like hey, I really love this stuff and I want to share this stuff with you and I want you to love it too. um and it's evolved really from that to being this, I think I used the term earlier, to being this like audio time capsule for myself, because now I'm kind of approaching it, and there was a little bit of a frustration in there during that transition period where I was like, oh, who am I even making this for now? And like nobody's listening or whatever. Like, because I think like the couple of things that I always used to ask for was, hey, I'm going to give you this, but I have two requests. I want you to listen to it from front to back, like before you add it to whatever playlist or anything like that that you have. Like, just give it one solid listen, and I want you to give me some feedback on it. Like, I want to hear your thoughts. And back in the day when CDs were the main thing, we were burning these on the CDs and handing them out. Like I would periodically get some nice feedback from them, but that seemed to dwindle more and more over the years, and especially now that I've switched to digital only and not worrying about burning CDs. Like I really don't know how many people are actually going through and listening to these. Like I can see that on Mixcloud. I know for sure not too many people are going on there and listening. And I assume it's probably the same for other avenues. So I think just over the years, it has, these have been more and more for an audience of one, as opposed to for friends of mine that I'm trying to turn on to music. So that transition and the acceptance of the different meaning behind these albums, was a process to get to. But now I think I'm at the point where I'm really approaching it with my own future self as my target audience, thinking that like I'm going to put this together as a nice little time capsule of what my year was, and one day, a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, I'm going to listen back on this and remember all the good or bad memories that are associated with these songs from this year. And it's hopefully going to bring me some kind of enjoyment. And yeah, I think that's been the major change in the way that I approach these things. And I think now that I kind of have that mindset, um, I'm almost enjoying them more, I think, in a way, because now they're specifically curated for me, right? So and who knows me better than me, right? so, so I think, I don't know, it's cool. Like, so I mean, even if literally you and I are the only people that listen to these things going forward, it's still something I want to continue to do, and still something I really enjoy doing.
But yeah, I appreciate it too. I look forward to it every year. And yeah, I really appreciated the extended time talking. Thank you, Cait, too, for joining us. And
Yeah.
let's get you out here to Lake Superior for a show.
Yes. It's the only lake I've never been to in my life. So yeah, I need to do that, and we need to go to a Twins game and
Oh
just
yeah.
hang out. Like, we need to hang out in person.
Yes, sir. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.